Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Ordinance Committee to order, this being Tuesday, February 26th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. With me, I have Counselor Juan Anderson Burgos, I'm Counselor Linda Vacan, and Counselor Terry Murphy. In the chambers, we also have Counselor Mike Sullivan. This evening, Counselor David Bartley, who's Vice Chair of the committee, had given me early notice that he would be out of state tonight. And today I did receive notice from Counselor Lisi that she had a conflict. But we do have a quorum and we're ready to go. So our first item of business is previous meeting minutes. So I'll accept a motion to take up item one.
Motion to take up item one.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Item one is previous meeting minutes, and we had received them by email from Ryan. I hope everybody's had a chance to review them. I believe we had November 27th, December 11th, and January 22nd minutes. Can I have a motion on those?
Motion to, what was the motion?
Receive and approve.
Oh, motion to receive and approve.
Second.
Do you want to put your mic on? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so now I'll accept a motion to take up item 2 and open the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we're now on item 2, which is a special permit application submitted by EMB Natural Ventures LLC for the establishment of a marijuana facility for cultivation purposes at 140 Middle Water Street, Holyoke, Mass. 01040. So we are in a public hearing, so what I would like to do is just housekeeping. Anybody who wants to speak on this issue, please give us your name and address, and then you will have an opportunity to speak in favor or in opposition to this project. But first, I would like the applicant to be able to come up and give a presentation of the project. Hi.
I'll make sure the mic's on.
Is the mic, you'd have to pull the switch toward you?
So that's that good?
Yep.
Yes.
My name's Jeff Dannenberg. I'm the legal advisor for the members and managers of EMB Natural Ventures. And I'd like to thank the committee for giving us this hearing tonight. We were scheduled for 2 weeks ago, but we got snowed out. So we appreciate you making the time for us tonight. In a way, I feel like we've actually had 2 hearings because we spent quite a bit of time working with Jeff Burkott and Marcos Morera in the planning office, getting ready for that last hearing and addressing the concerns that they had raised. We and the engineering firm that we've been working with and that did the site plan for us, it's the VHB firm in Springfield. Thanks again for letting us be here tonight. Let me just introduce some of the members of the team that's here. To my right here is Eddie Fernandez. He's the principal owner of EMB. David Fernandez, Eddie's brother, is going to be the director of operations for the company. Mike Dixon, next to him, is going to be the head of human resources for the company, and next to him, Mike Solomon is the director of marketing. Also here is Cassandra Cordova and Damaris Aponte. They're our local community outreach representatives. We met them through the Nueva Esperanza organization, and when we do get up and running, Cassandra will be working in sales and marketing, and Damaris will continue to work in community outreach. I did want, and also Brian O'Donnell is here. He's a local contractor who's going to be speaking after Eddie does. He's worked up the implementation of the security plan for us. Bob Saunders is here. He's got a dual role, actually. He's the building manager at 140 Middle Water Street. And he's also a local contractor, and we've engaged him to be the project manager for the build-out of the building once we finish the licensing process and the special permitting process. And last but not least, Brandon Hudson, he's the CFO of the company.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome.
And you will be hearing from our engineer, Jeff Gallarno from VHB. Before Eddie speaks, I just wanted to go through, I thought it'd be helpful just to put into context kind of the procedural history of how we got here. We started by leasing the property in August 21. We entered into a lease for the 140 Middle Water Street. That's a lease with an option to buy. And if we hopefully do get the special permit and the license from the CCC, we will exercise that option right away and begin the build-out process. And that build-out process should take approximately 4 to 6 months. So it will be toward the end of that process that we start our actual hiring of the initial staff. Then we're ready to go with planting and first harvest after that. After we got that lease agreement, we submitted our security plan to the police department. We were working with Captain Moriarty there to make sure the plan was consistent with their parameters. And we got Chief Febo's sign off on the plan on October 3rd. October 11th, we had our pre-application meeting with the department heads. Jeff Burkott and Marcus Marrero ran that meeting. So that was helpful to us because we got some good feedback, and VHB was there too. So we were able to, get a jump on some of anticipating some of the things that needed to go into the site plan and the developmental impact statement. October 25th is when we entered into the host community agreement with Mayor Morse. November 20th, we held our community outreach meeting here in Holyoke. That meeting was done consistent with CCC regulations, but it was actually a nice exercise for us because we got a little feedback right away. It was held at the Capri Pizzeria on Cabot Street, and we had 41 people came, and we actually had brought, Mike had brought some employment applications, and even though we said, it's going to be a while till later in the year before we're actually hiring people, we did get a number of them back for us to hold, so that was nice. December 14th is when, after VHB finished the site plan and the developmental impact statement and traffic analysis, that's when we submitted the application for the special permit to the City Council. And January 17th is when we finished our CCC application. So that's pending. Perfect world, we get a reaction from them by mid-March. I think that the one thing from my understanding is that they will be waiting for some type of a reaction from the municipality just to acknowledge that the special permit application has been granted. So I'm not sure if they actually wait for that or if they just expect something from the city. So I'm not sure who does that. So if I may, just one last thing. I thought it might be helpful just to show you where the site's located in case you don't know, and just to show you some images that we had done.
You can come on in and... It helps to have a visual for those of us who are spatially impaired.
This is the location, Google Maps, looking down. This is the bridge that goes across the river at Cabot Street. This is one Cabot Street on the side here. It's a very large parking lot, and there's 3 buildings connected with one another.
Yeah.
130 Middlewater, 134, and 140.
Thank you, Marcos.
Oh, thanks, Marcos. So this is our building, the one closest to the river. The 3 buildings are connected with a common wall, but there's no entranceway between one and the other, so each one has its separate entrance. And then I have, what I'm about to show you is, I call them before and after pictures, but it's the actual front of the building, and then what we are hoping it looks like after the build-out, and the same thing for the back. This is the front of the building, 140 Middle Water Street, 134 over here, which is United Paper. George is here, our neighbor. This will be the main entrance, which we'll be building out on. There's a garage located on the side here, which has a loading dock inside. So Jeff Galliano will be showing you as part of the site plan that we'll be building out a security area for vehicles to be able to enter into that would be locked before the garage door opens and vehicles can enter inside. This is an after picture. Because it's an indoor grow facility, you can't have any natural light. That would upset the grow process. So, I see in different parts of the city, there's different strategies used for covering windows. We chose this, we worked with the graphic artist to do this, and we chose like a glass brick look, but it's not actual glass bricks. It's an image. But there's an entranceway here with an ADA ramp, some signage. We worked with Mr. Morera and Mr. Burkott to make sure that the signage complied with zoning regs.
What is the fabric of the faux windows? What will they be made of?
Wood.
Oh,
Yeah, wood
Oh,
with
okay.
with
Painted
painted over, or some type of plastic covering. Maybe not plastic, but some type of a weatherproof covering.
Council Murphy. I'm
And
sorry.
just regarding the ADA compliant ramp, and I'm looking at it thinking, I'm not sure I could get a wheelchair up there.
Well, it goes here.
No, I know, but that looks like it's pretty steep there, and it
Well-
also looks like it's a pretty sharp turn.
Well, there's actual
Yeah.
parameters that the federal regulations have for that, so it would have to be compliant with that.
Okay.
But not just in terms of angle, but the width of the ramp,
Yeah,
the surface area of the square here, so that a wheelchair could turn around, and the same thing, the width and angle of the up ramp
and that
here.
would be for your employees, I'm assuming, because you're not gonna have other people.
Yeah,
come.
there's no retail aspect to the building, so there might be the occasional visitor, but it's really just employees or any city personnel or state personnel that ask for a visit.
Well, I appreciate it. I just wanna make sure I'm just looking at it thinking like that looks like a tough climb up
Right,
that,
right.
up that hill.
Yeah,
just a
I wouldn't-
representation.
It's a representation,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's just a
Counselor
graphic,
Anderson.
sorry.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's
Oh.
just a graphic, it's not the actual build, it's not.
Yeah,
built
no,
yet.
the builder will absolutely know what the federal regulations are for width and an angle of incline.
And I would note that Counselor McGivern has joined us in the chambers.
This is the rear of the building. Again, that's 134 here, the back of the garage, the back of our building. At one time, I think that there was an exit ramp here, but not anymore. That'll be covered up. And then there's an alleyway back here. And this would be the after picture. No reason for any coverage here, garage and the windows. All right, so thank you, I appreciate that. I'm going to let Eddie Fernandez speak, and then I'll come back and address you at the end, if that's okay.
Do you just want to remind us of how many square feet this is?
In the microphone, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
It's approximately 25,000 square feet, the building itself. The grow area will be between 15 and 20,000 square feet.
Thanks.
Hey, how you guys doing? I'm Eddie Fernandez. I'm one of the owners of EMB. I'm majority owner of EMB, and when we become active, I'll be the CEO of the company itself. So a little bit background about EMB in general. I have a company called CTNV. It's located in Waterbury, Connecticut, where I do vegetable growing and some herb growing. And I've been doing that for like the past 5 years, me and two of my other partners. And we just really liked the fact that we were so good at it, to the fact that we got to sell a lot of it to the city officials, or not city officials, but to the city as well as to the school systems. So I actually worked really hard to learn the process of that. So when I learned that process and then you guys became recreational, they worked hand in hand together. So that's the major reason why I decided to come up to Holyoke and use that same process that I've learned down in Connecticut over here, and do a lot more better for the community out here for jobs and so on. A major thing about it all is that part of us coming out here is I also have 1 Cabot Street that we are renting on the top floor, and we're actually are expanding the grow facility that I have in Connecticut up in Mass, up in Holyoke on 1 Cabot Street. It's around 100,000 square feet where I'm going to be able to grow the herbs.
For the herbs and vegetables?
Yeah, herbs and vegetables, just so that, because I know it's going to be the same process, and why not? It's going to be good for everybody. I can also supply more jobs. I'm looking around 25 jobs right now, 25, 30 jobs in Middle Water, and maybe at least a good 30 to 40 jobs in 1 Cabot Street. So to me, I think that's like a great deal for us, as well as I like to expand, because right now everything's about growing indoors, and it's going to really help the community. So we differ a lot because of the way we grow. So you already told them that. I think that's it.
The point of, but just thought it'd be good if you mentioned the point of starting to build that to the point of profitability, how long that takes.
Well, we're looking at, once we build it, you're looking at hopefully 6 months to get it all built out. And then once we get it built out, then we should be hiring people. So I'm looking within anywhere between 8 months to a year from the time that we do build out. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, you are.
Do you have questions? Mike, you're good?
Hi, my name's Brian O'Donnell, and I work for C&D Electronics here locally on 28 Appleton Street. Upstairs is the GTI, the Green Thumb Industry building. I approached Eddie at the community outreach meeting at the Capri Pizza and let him know who I was and what we were doing as an integrator, supplying security, access control, intrusion, lighting, video surveillance for various companies locally here in Western Mass in cannabis and just commercial business. So I was letting Eddie know that I'm very familiar with the CCC and what their recommendations are and the number of cameras that are needed. It's a state mandate that we follow to provide all the security. So we're local. We have local electricians that do the work for us that live here in town. So it's turned out to be a nice relationship. Good. Just wanted to let them know I'm supporting them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to head up to the,
Oh, sure. And just grab the microphone, please. Yeah, thanks. Because this is on the local TV channel, for those at home who might be watching.
That's heavy. Good evening. My name is Jeff Galarno. I'm a project engineer with VHB. I'm not the engineer of record. Unfortunately, John Furman's on medical leave, but I'm here to go through the site plans, and if you guys have any questions, I'd be able to answer. Jeff gave a great description of the project, but what I'd like to do is I'd like to go through the site plans that you guys have on record and point out some of the points related to the site within the property lines. So the dark line here is the property limit of work. As Jeff mentioned, it's the most southern portion of the building that has two party walls separating the three different three different buildings here. The access is here off of Middle Water Street, and the one ADA space is located here. The ramp will be designed to the ADA standards. Again, that was just a graphic representation. These slopes and turning areas will be under the regs, yes. The the fenced-in area here would be, will have lockable gates, swing gates, so if a vehicle would be able to pull in here, those gates would close prior to the building being open. If you traverse around the rear of the building, you'll see that there's a concrete area here, fenced in against, again, lockable with swing gates for it's a dumpster area, rolling dumpsters. You'll see here that the rear area is like a grass, dirt area, which will be removed and will be replaced with, it says here, 6-inch hard pack granular material. I'd like to point out here, there's a note here that indicates there will be 15 parking spaces located across Cabot Street with that has a letter of agreement. 15 spaces will be about 2,400 square feet. Some of the points I want to hit on are to address the comments that were going back and forth with emails would be stormwater. We basically are underneath the 2,000 square feet threshold for any stormwater permit. The only new impervious material would be the concrete area in the back, and then the roof of the entryway ramp would be considered an impervious material. The sanitary sewer, we went out to the site and accessed the building and located the sanitary sewer invert out of the building, which is approximately right, it's tough to see on this sheet, but it's underneath the entryway ramp there. We also located the water. The water is located in the back here. So what we're going to be doing is basically severing the fire protection service that runs through the building here, running a new line down the rear of the building here, and tying in so that it'll have its own fire protection system. Roof drains, we did not see any internal roof drains in the building. Water basically sheet flows off of the roof onto the ground and then makes its way in, sheet flows and makes its way into the underground system, existing system. Catch basins on site. And I think I can move away from this to show you some of the details unless there's any other questions you guys have.
I'm just curious to know, because we have a letter from February 5th and then a follow-up letter from February 11th, but I didn't track everything back to see if was all resolved from the 5th to the 11th. But does this water flow and the things you've just described here resolve that portion of the site plan?
Those, what I've just expressed here was our response back to the comments. I haven't heard anything back if you know,
All right, well, we can hear from
they were okay
Mr. Marrero.
with
Okay.
that, right?
I'm sure he can speak to it once we get through this.
Okay.
Okay.
Just ask one question on,
Sure.
Sure, Council
on
Murphy.
the area where the trucks are gonna come in. How big are the trucks, number one, and how many truck visits would you be expecting?
Jeff might be able to answer that.
Can you go to the mic, please? Thanks.
You're looking probably around one truck, maybe two trucks, 24-foot truck or so.
Okay, so just one or two
Per
a day?
day?
Two a day, I'm sorry, yeah.
Okay, okay, thanks.
Okay. We'll move on. Yeah. Put this down. That is getting heavy.
How fast can they go? I am.
Switch back. We're going to discuss. This is just a existing conditions survey.
A lot of work.
Your paper sounds as old as me.
One of the last things I want to just point out is we had a lighting vendor, Apex, go through and do a photometrics plan, and I tried to. It's difficult to see, but I prior to the meeting, I highlighted some of the things we should point out. Green is the property line. The blue dots are where there'll be wall packs attached to the building. They'll be shielded and facing down to prevent, glare facing in a butter. But the orange is basically the spread of light. The little dots here are basically a number of the foot candles that would be projected down onto the ground. So what I had our lighting vendor do was to come up with a shielded wall pack that would aim light down enough where it wouldn't cross the property line. So you'll see some of the foot candles here are 3.3, 4.8, and by the time it gets towards the property line, you're down under 1, so your 0.7s, 0.3, 1, and then it just dissipates. You'll see in the rear of the building that the property line is just up against the back of the building, so you'll see just a few foot, it's still under 1 foot candle at the back of the building crossing the property line, but that's just, an alleyway in the back, which is also better to have light, so.
Yeah.
But that's just the last thing I really wanted to point out for you, unless there's questions before I could pass it back on.
Not seeing any. Thank you.
Perfect, great, thank you very much.
If I could, I just wanted to kind of sum up by saying that I think that there's more to this project in terms of the potential advantages to the city than the usual things that you can guess about taking a property that's currently unused and putting it back on the tax rolls and getting revenue from the 3% impact fee. We'll be hiring local contractors for the build out. As part of the CCC application, we did a community impact plan, and we projected a hope for at least 80% hiring, which is in excess of what Mayor Morris, I think, expressed an interest in. But as a practical matter, we'd have no reason not to be hiring local. It just makes sense. Eddie Fernandez here has a bit of a gift for creating synergy with the local community, and he seems committed to not just having this business making an impact, but having his General Greens, the non-cannabis business, having an impact here too. Also, with the help of Ms. Cardona, Ms. Aponte, we established some communication with two folks at the Holyoke Community College, Jeff Hayden and Kate Milson. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Holyoke and the community college have entered into this just fantastic joint venture. I call it that. It's a workforce training program, basically, with this that the CCC created last year. It's the Cannabis Community Care and Research Network, and that's an apprenticeship and intern program. And it's just custom designed for people like Eddie Fernandez, who's got a gift for training people and teaching these grow techniques, which are good for any kinds of indoor cultivation, whether it's basil or tomatoes or cannabis or anything else. And with this program, they're looking for local students that can get internship from local businesses, whether it's retail, dispensaries, or cultivation facilities, or chemistry labs that do the edibles or whatever. I mean, we're only interested in the cultivation side, but it's a win-win for the city, for the community college, and for the local businesses to take advantage of it, because you're making a commitment in exchange for allowing some of these students to come in or to go there and work with them on an internship or apprenticeship basis to make a commitment to hiring out of the program. So it's just a great program. So thank you again. We respectfully request that the committee can take us up for a vote tonight, and we look forward to getting on to having the application submitted to the full city council.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
So maybe Mr. Marrero could help us out here. We have either one, wherever you like. That was adjusted for our speaker last night. I looked at these briefly, but everybody else hasn't had the ability to look at them. I have the correspondence from February 5th, which was the initial review, and then the follow-up February 11th. And so I was just interested to know, relative to any of the open issues, if there were any further updates. Is there anything outstanding that we should be waiting for that would need to come in to a public hearing? Or is there only information that we could receive outside of the public hearing, if any?
At this point, planning staff doesn't have any remaining issues. Funny enough, we sent our comments February 11th in anticipation of the last hearing date.
Right.
And 3 hours later, we got an additional round of clarifications that we hadn't received. And so those addressed everything. They've talked about it here already. So I don't think
Okay.
I have to repeat everything. We had just some, back in February 11th, we had some remaining questions around parking, the sign, and some other minor things. So that was addressed already in their presentation. There's no outstanding issues as it relates to the ordinance.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Mr. Marrero? Counselor Sullivan?
Not for Mr. Marrero,
Oh,
but
okay.
for anyone from EMB.
Okay,
In introducing your team, you introduced Bill Saunders as the contractor or construction supervisor?
Bob Saunders, yeah.
Bob. Or if Bob wants to address it, are you from Holyoke, Bob?
Bob, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I was born and raised in Holyoke.
Yep.
I moved to Connecticut for 20 years, but I've been back for the last 8. So I went through Holyoke schools, Holyoke High School, Holyoke Trade.
Okay, great. So you're familiar with all the local contractors, plumbing, electrical people and stuff like
Yes,
that?
sir.
Great.
And as a representative for Mr. Casano, we've only had a need for 2 contractors to perform any work at 130, and they're actually both from Holyoke. So it's, Tom Casano is very local oriented, as well as the team here, and that's why I agreed to work with them.
Yep, no, I've met Mr. Cusano, a nice guy. And just want to make sure I watched one of the other ones build out where they promised a lot of local contractors, and all the plates were Connecticut plates out there.
Yeah,
And we've
that's
got a
not
group
gonna be
from-
the case.
And now we've got a group from Connecticut up, so I just wanted to make sure that was happening this time.
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
nobody else, anything?
Question, I'll wait.
Okay. So I would just like to make the applicant aware that we've done a number of these special permits, and we have had a standard number of requirements under the special permit, and we've been pretty consistent on all of those, so that if you're doing the cultivation, we have the set that applied to that. I don't have the list immediately in front of me to read to you. I can only tell you that we've been consistent in applying it to each and every special applicant. So as yours would pertain only to cultivation, then those things such as hours and days would pertain only to that in the conditions that we have set. Is there anyone in the public at this point who wishes to speak in favor of this project or in opposition to this project? If there is, you can come up to the microphone, give us your name and address, and make any comments that you would like to offer.
My name is Julio Cordero, and 329 Main Street. I've been a resident of Holyoke for the past 28 years. I'm here representing Nuestras Raíces. I'm the vice president of the board, and we're going to speak in favor of their venture after Damari approached us and doing her community outreach. Nuestras Raíces, as some of you know, have been in the community for over 26 years. We, in collaboration with the college, with the city, we have been doing urban farming throughout the city, the community gardens. We also have the 30 acres that we manage in 24 Ferry Jones Way by Providence Hospital. And the organization sees this as an opportunity, as most of the farmers that have been with the organizations are phasing out because of age and they're moving on. But we see it as an opportunity to the community in South Holyoke to really flourish, learn the new techniques, bring the youth. We also have a youth program where we have about 60 applicants a year, but we can only accommodate 30 of them in our farm due to funding. And they learn the skills to do agriculture in land, not mostly inside. In the winter, we close the farm because the greenhouses are limited and costly to operate. So we look forward to the venture that they have on Cabot and also the venture they're proposing today here. So we see it as an opportunity to continue the partnerships. Nuestras Raíces has been working in the college with the freight farms. We have been working in many, many projects in the city when it comes to agriculture and the development of the youth of the city. So if they commit, I hear a lot of people say, I'm going to hire people from Holyoke, but where from Holyoke? Are you guys going to involve the youth from South Holyoke? Are you going to be that community that you're an impact? For example, our building on Main Street is less than a mile from them. We're at the corner of Cabot and Main Street. So we would like that involvement and the board to pretty much put in the stipulation that, yes, you're going to hire from the city at large, but in reality, I'm more interested on the impact of who we're going to hire in that neighborhood that you're really coming in and providing the skill set. I think they're committing to making that happen, in conversations with Damaris. She's been voicing it out. She's really well known in that community. She's been there longer than I could even think about. So to me, that's what I'm here to support them. I spoke to my board and we said, listen, could be a new opportunity to learn new technologies, new agricultural strategies, and develop those relationships and move it forward.
Great, thank you very much. I think that inside cultivation, so you can have all the summer herbs and vegetables in the winter, is really an exciting concept. So
It is really exciting for us because we have the greenhouses, we did the freight farm, so we're looking forward to seeing how we can train the youth with the strategies we already have and what they have and really merge it and create a dynamic for the city that is not the cannabis growing, but the vegetable practice they're looking to bring in.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
You mentioned some standard conditions. I was not surprised by that. Ryan Allen had mentioned to me, he didn't give me a list, but he had kind of gone through with me, previewed some of those conditions, and he also gave me some links to some videos of some prior hearings when I heard the discussion come up, and we've discussed it. So I don't want there to be any confusion about our position, that we accept those standard conditions.
Okay, and I do apologize. I usually carry them around with me from the council meeting so that I can read the entire list into the record, but I did some filing, so I do not have the list. But before the committee acts on it, I will pull it up from previous minutes, and we will be taking it from it. It does speak to hiring. It does speak to the hiring of the security folks, hours of operation, days of operation, and the security, of course, which you have addressed, and the police chief has signed off on.
Right.
Which I believe, do you know if, let me just take a look to make sure we have that with the application. Pardon?
Related to that, could I just ask a question about hours?
Oh, sure, Councilor Murphy.
So I know we have met before, and I believe it's a Monday through Friday operation, and it's 8 to 8. Is that still what the plan is?
Yes, I mean, there'll have to be some presence
Right,
on
security.
weekends because you're growing things.
Yeah.
They have to be watered. And you have to have some regular lighting adjusted. You have to create the effects of night and day on an indoor lighting facility. But in terms of full-time staff, there would probably be 2 shifts, 2 8-hour shifts staggered. So that would cover the period between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m.
Okay.
But if you need an extra copy or 3 extra copies even of that letter from Chief Febo, I have them.
Yes, that was just what I was checking to make sure it was with the application. I'm not seeing it
Sure.
here. So I do have the 2 letters from the planning meetings. I have your original application. At some point, there was a communication from stormwater, DPW relative to the site, was there, or
There was an early,
early on?
there was a question of whether, yes,
Thank you.
there was a question of whether the parking for employees would be in the area immediately outside the building. That's technically not our property. That's a company, Ederon. Their main office is on Appleton Street, but they have a loading dock and distribution center right across the parking lot. So they own the parking lot. They expressed an openness to our using the spots. However, VHB pointed out that by reserving the spots in that area, it would create an issue with stormwater. So rather than having to deal with that, we spoke with Tom Cusano, who's the owner of our building, but he's also the owner of the building across the way, 1 Cabot Street, and he's the one that gave us the written permission to use the spots over there. So that bypassed the stormwater issue.
Would you be willing to submit a copy of that so we can keep that with the application also?
I think that it was part of the submission to.
Oh, do you think it's in the
It was part of
original?
it's part of the response to the planning department. I think the first letter.
A copy of it?
I do have an extra copy if you want it.
I have the email with the questions, and then I have the updated email.
Yeah, there was a
But
letter.
just so that we're sure that with the application, we can document that the parking is adequate under the zoning. These are things that never become a problem until they do. And then if we didn't dot the i's and cross the t's, then it causes another problem. And if you don't have it immediately available this second, it can just come in to us through Ryan Allen outside of this particular meeting. Yeah. I mean, that's fine, because we know that it exists and planning has said that they're all set with it. So Marcos, from your point of view, there's nothing outstanding that, for the public hearing purposes? Relative to parking site plan?
Yes, that is correct.
We're good.
And
I'm just trying to make sure I
there would
don't
be
forget anything.
Sure, yeah, and there would be no issue from stormwater either. As they said, their intervention, the water percolates, so it doesn't create any stormwater issue.
Okay, thanks. For the parking? Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any questions before we close the public hearing. Oh, sure.
My name is George Leclerc, and I own United Paper Box Company. I'm the direct abutter on the common building that he referenced. I'm also the neighbor across the alleyway at 150 Middlewater Street. And we've been in operation since 1937 here in Holyoke, and we're fully in favor of your approval for EMB, and we look forward to them being our neighbor.
Oh, well,
Thanks.
thank you for
Sure.
speaking on this. Okay, last call. All set? All right, it seems that we have all the information that we need for the committee to act, so a motion to close the public hearing would be in order?
Trying to close the hearing?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So the public hearing is closed. We have a big agenda, and we have people here waiting. We're not going to act on this minute so that we can move through the rest of the agenda. Plus, I have to find the conditions to add to the permit, which I've referenced largely, but not exactly. But they won't be more than what you've seen on the video from the past, or exist in minutes, that I can say. Okay? So we're all set with this. The committee, if we don't take it up tonight, we will take it up in 2 weeks to act on the special permit, to make a recommendation to the council.
Could I just ask, Madam Chairman? If it's just the information in order to make sure they're complying with the restrictions that we put on it, is that what the issue is?
No, it's just the matter that we have to pull it together and get the language so that the conditions are in our vote properly stated. Yeah, that's all. I mean, we can do it later tonight, potentially. It's just we have a lot of people, we have a big agenda. We can circle back to
Yeah,
it.
if we can. I'd
It's-
like to see if we can move this.
It's on our agenda.
Yeah, if we can, I'd appreciate it. I think,
Yeah.
they've come and they've certainly answered all
Right.
my questions, and I certainly appreciate what they presented, so, and if we can do it, that would be great.
Right. Okay? All right, thank you.
You can take it.
Does he need this back?
No, he said we can.
We're good with these? We can keep this?
It's just, it's already, yeah. But remind me to.
How's Taylor doing?
Because I gotta find the.
Graduating this year? Yeah. And where'd she go? Fairfield? Okay. Oh, you tell them all I said hi. Okay.
You're welcome. Have a nice night.
Thank you.
That's what
I do too. I'm gonna ask Ryan to find the.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, Sarah.
Well,
They were.
What did they say his last name was? I thought they said his name was Mike Salt. Yeah, the first one was Dixon. Oh, I see.
It's cold here, right? I don't know. Usually I'm sweating.
I don't know, I have a sweater on, so I'm not cold, but, all right, I guess I'm trying to see if we should, I'm not sure we should go out of order or not. I saw Mike McManus is here.
Yeah.
And building commissioner, so we could go out of order and go to, I lost one. Where did Juan go? Juan. So I'll accept a motion to take up item 3.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 3 is an order filed by Counselor Valentin that an official petition and notification process be implemented regarding resident parking only requests, such as the petition and notification process in place for speed humps via ordinance at this time. Proposed wording that no resident parking only be established except upon petition to the city council signed by at least 2/3 of the property owners or 2/3 of the registered voters within the impacted segment of a proposed resident parking only street. Before us tonight, Crystal has provided us with some draft language or proposed legal language for this ordinance that we've been talking about for a couple of meetings. And I understand from Crystal that the only change to the current ordinance is the red line, which is the last page on the copy that you have here tonight. So, under suspension of rules, Crystal, would you mind just running through it with us to just highlight the differences? So if you want to make a motion
I
to,
make a motion, we allow the city solicitor to.
all in favor? Aye.
So this is almost a mimic of our speed
okay.
hump policy as far as needing a petition to the city council to request the resident parking and working through that process as far as public hearings. So it's just a little bit more involved than a simple order would be. That's the gist of it. If you're familiar with the speed hump policy, that's pretty much what this last page is, adding to our resident parking only designations.
And I realize I may be asking you a question that's already answered in here that I didn't pick up on, but is it going to require us to go to DPW to get feedback from them first, or can we just do the public hearing, petition and public hearing process here? Because with the speed humps, we have to go back and forth.
Right, I am looking, it goes to the city engineer so that we can look at the impacted segment because we need to do notifications to people.
Okay,
But it does not require a DPW specific referral.
Okay.
But I'd like to encourage that this is simply a draft and I'd like it reviewed and made sure that it's something that we would like to move forward with. So don't take my word for it, but it's here
All
for
right.
you.
All right, so it's not a huge portion of the ordinance that we're looking at here. And just for context, what's happened is the resident parking has become popular. On the other hand, it's also become debatable in that some people might want it and other people might feel it's prohibitive in the neighborhood. So out of some just maybe communication issues around it, it seemed that a clearer and a little bit more thorough of a process that would be sure that everybody in the neighborhood was aware of it and informed of it would make sense. And also that we're not just creating ordinances and then undoing them unnecessarily. So that's the gist of it. And I think we're all familiar with the speed hump petitions and how those signatures are counted. And I am looking here, and the impacted segment of 300 feet is the same. And the public hearing notice of the 14 days is consistent with what we do. And that the resident-only parking may be ordered removed by majority vote of the city council only after notice and public hearing also. So to do it, it's a public hearing process, and to undo it, it would be the same.
That makes sense.
But to do it, it's a resident's request.
In order to do it, they would have to file a petition signed by at least 2/3 of the property owners or 2/3 of the registered voters within the impacted area. And that's how we do the speed humps. And that way you make sure that where it's wanted, it's really
Anybody who's
in
gonna
the
be
interest of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the
Yeah,
gist of
yeah,
it. Does anybody have any other questions or? Councilor McGivern?
Please. I understand what's before you is how to implement fairly a residential parking area. I think there's bigger questions, broader questions that need to be answered before we attempt to do another residential parking zone. The most communities don't do it, neighborhood by neighborhood. They do it citywide. Each of us are residents. Each of us are taxpayers, as are all our constituents that we represent. And to prohibit someone from parking on a city street in a certain neighborhood doesn't make sense to me. Especially, the only one that is fairly existed and worked out was the one across from the high school, which is typically mostly a single-family neighborhood with every home having a driveway and with some on-street parking issues. And in our rental neighborhoods, and I grew up in a rental neighborhood, it's very difficult to limit parking. When you have people, an apartment having 30 years ago was one car, maybe two. Now it's 4 or 5 cars per apartment. And visitors, how do you address that? And again, how do you address anyone in Holyoke from, going into a neighborhood that is a mixed neighborhood where there's also commercial use or retail use in that near that neighborhood itself. I think it's far more broader than just how to do it. I think we have to start thinking about, the big picture of when we do it, how do we be fair to the entire city?
And I hear your point. The order that we have taken this up under and what Crystal has given us language on was specific to the process, which up until now is simply we each file an order and it gets reviewed and
I understand.
pass it.
Yep.
So this was just to make it a more robust process, but it wouldn't stop us from also taking a bigger view of the whole issue separately. But I think we might need a separate order to do that. I don't know. Crystal, under this, could we go broader than the process for doing it? Because I think your point is speaking to when it should even be okay to petition for it, right?
Correct, but also when you do create a residential parking zone, you're excluding a lot of people. You're excluding people who live in the city, you're excluding people who come to the city, you're excluding visitors,
So, what we have before us is, we're talking about the process about implementing resident parking only, which, like I said, is what this draft is for. If there needs to be an addition to that process, or if we want to, anything that speaks to the process, I think we could discuss. I think maybe another order to look at the permit parking section, so section 86-106 as a whole.
We'd need a different order.
I think we would need a different order.
Yeah.
But being that this is a draft, we can certainly
We can table this and.
table it, and we can start a different draft if that's what.
Yeah. So, Counselor McGivern, I don't think there's an urgent timeline on this. It's kind of been out there for a while. So if you want, or you want to ask somebody, us as a committee, to file another order to also address when a petition would be appropriately filed, or under what circumstances we could do that.
I agree. I think that's a good approach to do it, because you don't want to put the cart before the horse if we don't have the final product that makes sense. And right now, there is no final product. We've been all over the board with this.
We're in
and-
discussion, we're looking at a draft.
No, I'm talking about what residential parking is. There's been no real final product that has worked, and I think that's the real problem, is how do you make it work? Not how do you do it, but how do you make it work?
Yeah. Do you want to file a separate order in that
I'll
regard?
be happy to, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then, why don't I take a motion to table?
I make a
and-
motion, we table this.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we'll table that for further discussion and from a broader point of view. Okay, so item 3 is tabled. I'll take a motion to take up item 4.
Make a motion, we do item 4?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 4, filed by Counselor Bacon, that a permanent reconfiguration of Sunset and/or Ashley Road or other streets in the neighborhood be considered once the temporary pilot project is completed. I know there's a couple folks from the neighborhood here. I see Mike McManus here. Mike, if you have some update or feedback for us on this, that would be great. I have had some suggestions from folks in the neighborhood, such as maybe using a gate so emergency folks could still access. So if you could just update us on this. The last public hearing was strongly represented by the community, and I think almost every person that came to the microphone spoke in favor of this. So,
We've advanced the concept of the sidewalk to block off, dead end those two roads.
okay.
We have a cost estimate of about $25,000 to do that work. The thing with the sidewalk is that it would still allow for emergency vehicle access through either side.
Okay.
I know you had talked about a possibility of putting a vehicle control gate or some sort of gate at the end of the road.
It was just a suggestion that,
Yeah, and I think that could slow down emergency response if someone needed to physically open the gate. And I think if it was an automatic gate, that could be problematic.
Yeah.
And more expensive too.
yeah.
And
and
require
maintenance.
maintenance.
Yeah. Okay, so so that is your recommendation, that we would do the sidewalk and it would be a cost of 25,000? So is that going to be something that would have to come in as a separate budget issue for this to actually be able to happen?
For something that large, yes, it would have to be its own budget. We wouldn't have room within existing DPW budgets unless at the end of the year, where we looked at all of the pots of money that we have left over at the end of the fiscal year and transferred money from various accounts into one budget. At that point in time, we would possibly have enough money to fund this project.
Okay, so in a situation like this, assuming for the moment that we're not going to have the money by the end of June, because we all know there's not very much there, is it something that could be reasonably budgeted for in the new year, or is it going to have to be some kind of special outside money that we would have to obtain to make this happen?
So we're in the budget season now, where
Right.
we're preparing budgets. I haven't had a conversation with the mayor about DPW's budgets for next fiscal year yet, but this would
Okay.
be part.
Coming soon, right?
Yes, yeah.
Well, I guess,
And also outside of the city budget, I don't really know of any funding sources for this work.
this type of a thing.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't fall within complete streets or safe routes to school.
It wouldn't,
No,
okay, because of the location.
correct.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for that information. I know there are some members of the public here on this issue. Did you get enough information from what Mr. McManus just said? If you, okay. Otherwise, we can suspend rules if public wants to speak, but it's not a public hearing, so. Thank you very much on that, Mike. And I guess at least we know if we can find the money, what we can do.
If I just make one, and it's not my word, so.
No, no, go ahead, sure, Councilman.
But I did get a communication and they knew this was coming up, and they're concerned, but they're also concerned about just traffic on Homestead Avenue and people on Kane Road and Upland, I think it was. They're also concerned about trying to figure out ways to make less traffic coming into their neighborhoods as well, just so you know. And I just want to, so you're talking about putting a sidewalk where there's no sidewalk? Is that what I'm hearing?
Right.
Correct.
So a sidewalk so that people could walk without getting hit.
And it would
The
close
project
the
would be closing off the end of Sunset Road and Ashley Road at Westfield Road, so that you wouldn't be able to exit either of those streets onto Westfield Road, and you wouldn't be able to exit Westfield Road onto either of those streets.
Okay, and just one, again, going back to the fire safety issue. So
the sidewalk would be constructed, and there would be a mountable curb, essentially a driveway apron in
they would
the
just be able
sidewalk,
to-
so that fire apparatus or police vehicles, ambulances would be able to drive up and over.
Okay.
But it would look like a sidewalk with
Oh,
a
it's not
landscaped
cars-
area.
Cars would realize you can't keep going there, so.
Correct.
Okay. So I just wanted to let you know I had
Yeah.
heard from some of your constituents.
Well, if we can shrink Westfield, we'll have less traffic coming.
And as far as Kane Road and those other side streets go on the other side of Homestead Avenue, we are looking at that intersection as a whole. So we have a consultant who's going to be doing a road safety audit of that intersection. It's the first step in working with Mass DOT in order to try to make some signal improvements, again, and further geometric improvements to that intersection to try to improve traffic flow so that there wouldn't be the desire on people to cut through the neighborhoods.
Yeah, and I do get a lot of calls about the crosswalk and there at the school and people zipping right through. So, yeah, any improvements would be welcome, although they also say they don't want another light. Just FYI. This is what I hear. But thank you very much. Any other questions?
Just
Counselor McGivern?
real quick, Mike, put aside the cost of the project, and I think we all agree that the culprits that are forcing this type of a project are out-of-town drivers, particularly coming from the Westfield area. Is the DPW in favor of closing these streets?
Yes and no. I mean,
I
Personally,
understand
yeah.
there's not a lot, but there is yes and no to this.
I mean, there's nothing that, this is the only remedy that we can think of to prevent people from cutting through the street. It would make the street safer. It definitely improves the neighborhood aspect of the area. It would complicate some DPW operations such as snow removal and trash collection, trash and recycling, because now we're dead-ending two roads that don't have a proper cul-de-sac or an easy way to back up. And it could possibly complicate the school routes for drop-off and pick-up, as we saw at the public meeting. But I think all of those issues can be mitigated through proper practice and planning.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Make a motion that
So,
it's been complied with?
yes,
Second, yep.
all in favor?
Aye.
So for those folks who are interested in this issue, it's going to come down as many due to money. What'd you say?
A lot of baking.
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion to take up item 5?
I'd like to make a motion to take up item 5.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This item was filed by Counselor Sullivan, that the city council and mayor amend the city ordinances to create a commission whose purpose is to consider all aspects of the Whiting Street Reservoir. The commission should be comprised of Holyoke residents only. The charge of the commission should include reviewing costs to maintain the reservoir and repurposing it for future use, as well as ensuring that reasonable environmental considerations are maintained. We do have language here with the yellow highlights on this. And it is the first time we're seeing it, and the other maker of the order, Counselor Bartley, has asked that we would accept the language and review it prior to the next meeting. Counselor Sullivan, I know, wants to speak to this briefly, and then,
Yep, no, Counselor Bartley reached out to me this afternoon as well. He'd like to give everybody some time to look it over, make any comments on the final version, bring it back. So I'm happy just leaving it tabled, give everybody one more chance to look at it.
right, because I think you folks have had it, but we
Yep.
haven't. So a motion to table is in order, and we'll table it for 2 weeks.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so item 5 is tabled to 2 weeks. Okay, motion on item,
I'd like to make a
so I
motion-
think item 6 we'll leave on the table.
Is it part of?
Counselor Bartley not being here, this is his order.
Oh,
We'll just leave that, you won't take that up. So how about a motion to take up item 7?
I'd like to make a motion to take up item 7.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 7 was filed by Counselor Bresnahan, that the Ordinance Committee review the current vacant and blighted building ordinance by calling in the Health Department, the Building Department, Greater Holyoke Landlord Association, and any other concerned parties to address the ordinance and determine if there is a more business landlord-friendly way to ensure vacant buildings are in compliance with the current ordinance. Just by way of background, a few years ago, we set it up because a lot of buildings were just languishing, lots of times with out-of-state. We have modified it once to take into consideration single homes that were within probate court due to the death of the owner. And this appears to be a request for us to consider perhaps a similar tweaking to the ordinance. So I don't know, Mr. Cody, do you want to give us your view on this? You can come in, or the mic, whatever you prefer.
President is here, though, so.
Oh, is he?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's right here.
Council Bresnahan has joined us. I'm sorry, I didn't see you come in.
Ninja.
I would have let you speak to your order first.
So in continuing what you were just touching on, actually, because I don't know if everyone knows the history, I think we've had this ordinance on the books for 10 years or so, but
that long?
it hasn't really been enforced in the same level as it has recently, but in about the last 3. So the things like the liens being put on properties, that's in the big picture of things, a fairly recent activity, which might bring some folks in to have a conversation about what maybe is not the best, right? So it was 15, then 16, we had the fees set at, it was $500, $1,000, $3,000, and $6,000 at the top, which at our last meeting, or the last time we reconsidered this, we reduced that down to a much smaller amount, which is 0 for the first year, as you mentioned,
Right.
with the properties that maybe went to foreclosure or whatnot, or somebody for their first year of owning the property, to $1,500 to $3,000, so they cap at 3. And those have been changed at least 3 times since I've been here, and that's where we stand now. So if anyone has older copies, I could understand why, because they've been changed so much, but that's what we're looking at.
So the maximum is 3,000 now?
3,000. So it's $0, $1,500, and 3,000. That's for commercial properties. And we also changed the time limit to rehab. It used to be 6 months, and if you remember, I came in and said 6 months is just not enough time to do
Yes.
something larger. So we've made a sort of unlimited, within a reason, period of time to rehab it. So I just have a few things, I guess, about it. One of the detrimental things about changing the ordinance constantly, logistically, it's really difficult.
To
So I have no
remember
issue.
what it
Let's,
is.
let's change things for the better as we need to, but if we keep changing them, like even I was looking today and going, I don't even know which one's the right one anymore.
Yeah.
In our paperwork. And then you have these owners of properties who are getting stuff online, and they're getting old information, and they're looking at the wrong things, the wrong forms. So if we settle on something great, and it's not going to work for everybody. It's just not. We're looking for what's going to work the best for the city and the majority of the people, but it's not going to be perfect for every business model or every property owner that maybe has 10 properties versus the one that has 1 property. It's not going to hit every angle. What I could say is that this last year we've covered almost all the vacant properties through the process from getting notified to the end, where even at our appeals, we had probably 1 out of the 10 people that chose to appeal that just had to pay the fee. And the others were given more time to get us a plan, or came into compliance one way or another, something where there wasn't really a detriment in any way for them other than they had to do the work on the property or sell it, which is our goal in the city, is to
Right.
have the
That's
properties
right.
back online. I threw some numbers in here from what we were looking at, and, this is just my guesstimate, but 90% of the cases in the last year were given the waiver of it's a deferral technically of the fee system, because they gave us a rehab plan.
Okay.
And that's what we want. Some people came in and they paid the fees. That's another way where you don't have to pay. I'm sorry, they got the fees reduced because they paid building permit fees. It's another way that you don't have to pay the vacant building registration fee. So if you have a $1,500 assessment because you have a vacant property for the 2-year mark, and you pay $1,000 in building permit fees, even without a plan, it just comes off that $1,500. And it's not hard on a big building to get an accumulation of fees between plumbing and gas and sheet metal and electric, fire department, sprinkler systems, all that. It's very easy to get to $1,500. So they automatically have those removed. The other deduction is the maintenance. So simply if somebody just maintains the building for a year, during that year, they get a 50% reduction on that fee. So if they pay $1,500 and they've just done the minimum stuff, which is don't let the graffiti get built up on it, don't leave the trash outside, keep the grass cut, And that's all listed, detailed in the ordinance. It's 50% off. So it's 1,500, again, down to 750. Now you take out a building permit, you're down to nothing again. In most cases, I think it's pretty easy for people to not have to pay a fee. But, you know, again, there's going to be cases where people just don't, they're not making it happen, you know, for whatever reason. And that's not for me to say. You know, I can give you a couple, you know, and because I know you got a lot of people here, there's a couple of sample cases that I thought of, and the gentlemen are here tonight with 185 Pine. It's Craig Vigilio's building, and I reminded him he might want to come in, so, you know, he can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but here's a case where the building was, it's a 5-story apartment building, 10 units. We started enforcement a long time ago, 2010, really significantly on the building with the previous owner before Mr. Vigilio. And, you know, in my opinion, all that extra enforcement, the registration, we had to take physical action because the porches are falling off, and we actually had to send in a third party and lien the property, led to the owner, through many meetings, selling the building to now Mr. Vigilio, who then was notified, you got to give us a plan. He gave us a plan. It's a 10-year plan, so I can't, you know, I don't think anyone could say that there's an unreasonable period of time that we're saying you got to do it in. It's 10 years, and because of his being in compliance with the plan that we accepted, there's no fee. You just keep doing what you said you're going to do, no problem. And another case is the Hotel Jess is Tony Whitman, and he's here. So Mr. Whitman has that property, and that's another case where it goes back to the 90s, where the building's been vacant, and I don't want to say abandoned, but blighted, and it's been a problem through enforcement. There was a bow in the wall. We made the owner fix that. This is all previous owner. Eventually got to the point where, through registration fees and everything else, it incentivizes the person to move on, and he sold it, and now it's in the hands of Mr. Whitman, who gave us a rehab plan. It's been accepted, and it's in compliance. And one of the first things he did was put the polycarbonate up, which is an ordinance we passed, remember, in the past, and it overnight became phenomenally better looking, you know, with lighting on it, and it's not a blighted structure. You know, and I'll end with just one thing, because you know, Curtis in our planning department did some work, and you know, he put a lot of time and effort into this, but he was looking, we asked him through our group to look at what the effect is on neighborhoods of blighted properties. And this is kind of a technical thing. I didn't read through it all that he gave me, but, you know, in a couple of case studies, just to keep it brief. But essentially, he looked at police calls, fire calls, calls to the building department, all the complaints, and put them around a blighted property and made the correlation. So it's almost an academic study here. And when you have this blighted property, the presence of police calls and need to the fire department, need for the building and all the city services increases 2.4 times higher than other samples in the city. So the blighted properties just bring a need for all of our services, which is money. It's time and it's money for the taxpaying people of the city. You know how much everyone makes, you know, in some of these departments, you know, to just roll one fire truck out, that's not one person, that's 4 people or 3 people, or whatever it might be. So anything we could do to reduce it is, you know, our goal, because it's ultimately saving the city, getting these things back in the tax rolls and not becoming a drain. That's all I have really. If I'm here to answer questions.
No, the update on is appreciated because I didn't remember all the reiterations, but I know that our goal was to try to move these blighted properties from being blighted into something better. That was the overarching goal. Council President, I'm sorry, I would have.
That's quite all right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with all the sentiments of the building commissioner. The issue really becomes that when we have these fines at such the amount that they're at, then the city of Holyoke eventually becomes the landlord of that property. And, you know, what are we going to do? Are we going to tear the building down, which we have done in the past, and we've done it multiple times. There's also, with all the new laws on sprinkler systems, I mean, I guess I'm not against the concept because this ordinance was created off the city of Boston's ordinance, which we adopted when I was working in the health department. I just think that, you know, the calls that I'm getting from Holyoke residents that own Holyoke properties, it might not be working. I mean, you know, I've never thought that the job of the health department or the job of the building department was to create revenue. their jobs are to create safety. And I firmly believe that. They're not about making money, they're about making projects, they're about making restaurants and buildings safe. So I just think that, and I'm sure there'll be some folks to speak to this, that no law has ever been perfect. We adopted this law, basically verbiage, right from the city of Boston 10 years ago. That's how it was. We just wanted an ordinance because we had so many buildings that were owned by out-of-state landlords that we figured, well, maybe if we can either start the receivership program, which we successfully did, or we can demolish them if we had the extra cash, then that's why we would put these liens on it. Because finding someone $3,000 a year when the property's worth $40,000, then we're on the hook for these buildings that we just saw take place. We just took a building over on High Street. And then we're responsible for not only tearing it down, making it safe, relocating businesses. It's just an opportunity to get a little bit more feedback. We have a new director of Old Holyoke Development. And if you remember from the 70s, Old Holyoke Development was basically exempted from a lot of the ordinances because the place was burning down. And they had to get permits in place, and they had to try to do the best that they could. And now that there's been a lot of laws change, I mean, the Warwick, Rhode Island fire in that bar changed the capacity numbers down. So you own a restaurant, it burns down, you got to wait for the insurance claims to go through. You got to, if you had the liability, Damien can surely correct me, please. But, you had a capacity for a certain level, and now the place is destroyed. Now you got to bring it to code. So if you have a capacity over 50, you got to put a sprinkler system in. We had Miss from the Unicorn put a sprinkler system in. I mean, laws change, so we just have to be adaptable and friendly. Because if I had the money to buy a vacant building, and for me to get it on the dole, on the tax, paying back the taxes, what's my incentive? There isn't any, because I'm paying, after a few years, I'm paying up to $3,000 a year to get it. And I'm not against the enforcement. I think it's fantastic. I think Damien and Brian are doing a great job. But at the end of the day, when the law was created, we're going back 17 years possibly at this point. I just think things have changed. And I think that, we have a new Holyoke Economic Development Director, or I'm sorry, Hello Holyoke Director, however you change your name, Mike, my apologies. But they've come, the folks I used to meet with, the Greater Holyoke Landlord Association, I used to meet with and say, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, what do you think? They've all kind of reached out to me and say, I know you're not in the health department anymore, but, this is what we're trying to do. I mean, is there any lenience? And it sounds like there is. And again, there's two sides to every story, as I spoke to Linda earlier about, but it'd just be nice to give everybody a fair shake, because we don't want to take these buildings over if we put the lien on them so high that they're worth nothing, where the guy that owns it just walks away, and then we're stuck with it, and we have to demolish it, or we have to relocate businesses. It's really that simple. This is not a criticism on any department, because they're all doing a great job, but just figured to give an opportunity to let some business or property owners speak to it. Thank you, Count.
Thank you. I think part of what we've heard so far is a little bit helpful, because I think we've had a little bit of clarification on the changes that have been made to the ordinance. But if the members of the committee are willing, we can allow some of the developers or business folks to give us feedback if they have specific portions.
I make a motion to allow the public to speak.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Damien, if you know, and I'm not sure if you were able to prepare for that, but to the point that Councilor Bresnahan made about the city then having to take buildings because of, the people walking away because of the fees, do you have any way of quantifying that?
It's possible, but if the thing was with tax title, that's going to be a thing where we're taking the property through tax title. So even at $3,000 a year, if you looked at our numbers for tax title,
it would be the fees plus the taxes.
Well, if they're not paying taxes, right, that would expedite it for sure. But if it was just the fees, we wouldn't even be touching those, because if you look at the list of properties that the tax title custodian's been taking, we're looking at ones that are $300,000, $100,000, not the ones that owe $6,000 to the city.
Right.
But if they're not paying their taxes
Well, that's
over
a
20
whole
years,
separate
and we're
thing.
tacking that on, in some cases, that's actually our tactic. So
Yeah.
Silvio Conti Building is a good case where there's been a handful of owners in the last 5 years. They've done nothing with the building. Nothing is, in terms of even maintaining the little bit of vegetation. There's graffiti all over it, all constantly, broken windows. So we are finding, in addition to the vacant building registration fee, and they're actually just paying it. So they must have paid $20,000 last year between the taxes and everything else. Not our goal. We're not, I agree, we're not in the business of
Right.
trying to collect money. We want them to just take the graffiti
them to
off and
fix
clean
it.
up the overgrowth and
Yeah.
the windows and do something with it.
Right.
But in this case, if they didn't pay it, then certainly a case like that, it would get to the point where we would have to, I guess, pull the trigger and take it for taxes.
But you're not having the sense that there's a lot of that happening, or it
Not,
does
not solely on this system, only because, again, it's still only $3,000 a year, and that's if you even
Yeah.
think about it, we've only been leaning them for 3 years, so the most any property would have today is $9,000 if they, 3 years ago, weren't paying them up until today, so.
It's helpful to have that framed. So if there are members of the public here who want to speak on this, you can come to the mic, give your name and address, and if there's a particular area of the ordinance or particular issue with the language, yes, Krista?
The Board of Health would like some input as well.
Oh, well, come on, come on in. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you. You can come in here or be there, whatever you prefer. And just make sure the light is on. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. So I'm Sean. I'm an inspector for the Board of Health. And I just wanted to add a couple things to this, just to flesh it out a little more. One of the things is, as Council Bresnahan mentioned, we're not in the business of collecting revenue, which I agree with, but those fees, just to clarify for some members of the public that might not know, those go into a revolving fund, and that money is directly put back into resolving some of the issues that are created by the vacant and blighted buildings. So if you have buildings that are not owned by the city that are falling down, or are owned by the city that are falling down, or there's an emergency, or there's illegal dumping, or there's graffiti, or there's other safety issues, the money that is collected can then be specifically repurposed to resolve those issues without costing the taxpayers additional funds. So we're sort of moving those monies towards a better end. It's
Trying to
not
stay
just
ahead of
going
it.
right into the general fund, or it's not just an additional tax. It is being purposed specifically for this. And then, the second part of this is, if you are paying the $3,000 fee, I would say that chances are, we try to give property owners every opportunity to avoid paying the fees. There are multiple ways, offsets, deferrals. If you're paying the fee, there's a good chance that, you're either not coming in to discuss with us, or you're not responding to our letters that we send out, both first class and certified mail. It's a month-long renewal period that we have when these letters go out, and then the appeals go on for another 2 weeks after that. So there's an extended period of time where you can come in, you can reach out to us, you can discuss. There's no reason that if you bought a building and there was a fire there, or there was some catastrophe, and you had a long period of time that it needed to be rehabbed, there's no reason that you couldn't come to the Board of Health or come to the building department and say, here's my plan, it's gonna take me 6 years, but I need to wait for the insurance, and I need to go through these steps of, pricing out a sprinkler system. We're not just penalizing people solely for owning a business or a building that doesn't have an active business in it. This is only if you have a building and you're unwilling to work with the city, or you're unwilling to submit something that's as simple as maybe, several pages of plans that have times and dates on there. So I just want to clarify that we really make an attempt to give people an opportunity. We don't want people to pay the fee. We'd rather see that money go back into the building and get it cleaned up, or get it renovated, get it back on the tax rolls. It's not just, we'd rather not collect the money at all, if possible.
So from your point of view, you feel the ordinance as it is written gives enough flexibility that if a person is willing, you're able between your two departments to consider the unique circumstances in each
Absolutely.
situation.
And to second what Damien said, you know, we took 11 appeals, I believe, this year, and one person was, he voluntarily chose not to submit a rehab plan. He came in and met with the city, you know, almost a month before the notices went out, and he chose not to submit a rehab plan, the Silvio Conti building, and he chose to pay the fee. But that was his choice. I mean,
That is a
we spoke
choice.
to him on the phone, he appealed, we gave him a litany of options. If anyone reaches out, that's the first thing we tell people. If they're concerned about the fee or the tenability, the first thing we tell them is, look, there are all these ways that you can work around this. We want you to see you spend your money to maintain your asset. And you know, the buildings that we do unfortunately have to take for taxes, those buildings, sometimes it's a little bit of a foregone conclusion where, you know, somebody maybe bought something out of their reach at a tax title auction, or they purchased a building that they weren't maybe aware of the issues there, and then those are sort of, they're already in that route towards tax title before we ever get to them. But the fees, I think, are one method of having a little teeth. So, you know, there needs to be a little, it provides a little emphasis that, you know, if you own this building and you're not willing to put together a plan, you're not willing to maintain the building to give you a 50% exemption, you're not willing to spend the money to get building permits to reduce your fees, then maybe you shouldn't, you know, be maintaining this building this way. Maybe you can consider selling it or taking on a partner instead of just, you know, if you're taking that fee for $3,000, chances are you're just leaving the building as is year after year after year, and maybe there's a better purpose for that other than just sitting on it.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for the clarification, and sorry for the delay. So if members of the public, building owners, interested parties wish to weigh in or give us some food for thought?
Sure. Hi, my name is Martin Dunn, 89 Madison Avenue in Holyoke, and I'm here tonight representing One Holyoke Development Corporation. Michael Moriarty's here as well, the executive director, and he's going to be speaking later. But, you know, by and large, I'd just like to commend the city. I think the ordinance was well-intended. I think it's had a lot of success, obviously. Who can argue with the, you know, with the intent of the ordinance? And obviously, I think it's had a lot of success. But I think that it's also incredibly stringent, and there are situations that I've been aware of that have come about. For example, you know, where there are circumstances that necessitate hanging on to some property until you have the ability to renovate that property. I think you're all familiar with it's One Holyoke Development Corporation. Now, for years, it was Old Holyoke Development Corporation. We've seen what they've done in Ward 1 across the city. They've recently purchased the Portuguese American Club in the city of Holyoke. They've moved the building from the Yankee Peddler premises down to Pine Street, created an enormous amount of single-family home development, and also oversee a great deal of rental property in the city of Holyoke. So let me just give you one example of something that's happened here. One Holyoke Development owns 88 to 90 Northeast Street, and physically affixed to that building is another building at 8486 Northeast Street. So the buildings are affixed to each other. One Holyoke made the argument that they were two separate structures, but at the end of the day, the city took the position, and we're not here to argue that tonight. The city took the position that it was two separate structures, and therefore it was two separate buildings that each had to adhere to the vacant building ordinance. The property at the property at 88 to 90 Northeast Street is fully functional. There's residents within there. The other adjacent property, however, is not functional at the present time, and there's a very good reason. One Holyoke at the present time, and for the past several years, hasn't had the resources to revitalize that building. So as time went on and we went to an appeal, we lost the appeal, and I believe there's $3,000 that's been assessed against the building. And I might say it's not just a case where fees are and these penalties are paid. They become liens on the property going forward. So here we have a CDC in the city of Holyoke, an organization that's done an enormous amount of good work. I would respectfully submit to this committee that has every intention in the future to revitalize this structure adjacent to an existing structure. And because they haven't been able to do it in a 2 to 3 year period, there's really just no mechanism that allows them any relief. Damien's been very receptive. I've met with him on several occasions. We've talked about rehab plans, and I know that's the process that's in place. But it's not just as simple, unless I've missed something, it's not just as simple as submitting a rehab plan, because the rehab plans that I have reviewed have benchmarks, architectural renderings, the construction begins. All of those rehab plans, require investment. So it's not just the case that I've been exposed to, where you walk in and you say, well, this is what we want to do. We want to create 8 units of housing, and these are the rough draft renderings of it. It's a case where you've got to come in with a rehab plan, and which has benchmarks that require you to hire architects, to require you to invest money that you might not have. So I also think that in terms of relief, if you read the ordinance, there's really on the appeal, unless you present the rehab plan, unless you start spending money, there's only one issue that the ordinance allows relief in connection with, and that is the building vacant or not. If the building is vacant, then you're subject to the penalties. So I think the ordinance is great. I think it's well intended, but I think there are, some exceptions that there's no flexibility that the city has to make determinations on. If someone in this community has invested hundreds of thousands of dollars, has done tremendous work throughout the years, and they have to sit on some property for a while for reasons of financing or whatever, I think it's rather harsh to penalize them. I mean, the alternative is you can put it out to a receivership. Certainly you can appoint the receiver. A receiver's going to come in, they're going to fix it up, then they're going to probably sell the building. And then we subject ourselves to now who owns the building. It's not the local property developer that's done all the good work here. It could be another LLC from Boston coming in, scooping up the property, and that's how we got in this fix to begin with, is having situations like this. I can see you want to ask a question.
Well, I take your point, but from trying to think about it from the perspective of an ordinance,
right?
There's 2 ways of approaching it that I can think of off the top. One is that you create an exemption of some sort for either a certain type or a certain class or a certain something within the ordinance. I'm not sure if that meets a fairness test, but I mean, that is a thing that can be done. We've already extended the length in it, as Mr. Cody described, in feedback to the actual implementation of it. But we also became more strict when we were selling the properties at auction or otherwise, that people have to do something within X amount of time or it reverts back, because the whole idea is that it won't just be sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess if you're asking, or if the question is, before the ordinance committee to somehow modify the ordinance, I guess, because I've heard of it, what appears to be a lot of ability to reduce the fees, modify the thing, or whatever.
Yeah.
I guess my question would be, what would you have the ordinance committee consider? I mean, would it be to take what's 1 year and make it 2 years?
No,
Or would it be, I mean, what would it be?
I don't have all the answers to that. I mean, what I was...
I don't know if you have a suggestion.
Yeah.
Or an area of the ordinance that
I think
somebody
that
wants us to look at.
I don't have the perfect answer for that. I think that's worthy of, a study, and maybe all the people here that are involved in this. that might have some of the same concerns, coming up with some practical solutions on how to deal with that. I know Councilor Breston filed the order tonight, and I think the intent was just to start the discussion.
To understand.
I don't have a perfect solution. All I'm here to represent is that and I agree with the ordinance. I think it's done, the Board of Health has done great work. Damien's done great work. I think by and large, it's worked very, very well, obviously. But I'm just here to point out that there are some, I think, exceptions where the city doesn't seem to have much flexibility. I'll give you an example. Michael last June bought that property at the Yankee Peddler, One Hoyoke Development Corporation. Moved it down to Pine Street, and you got a notice this. Got a notice this fall, a vacant building notice. Technically, that's what should have happened, because he's hopefully going to start renovation and construction when the better weather comes. But technically now you've got, it was a kind of a big event for the city. One Hoyoke Development Corporation put in, I think, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think the city also contributed CDBG money and some other monies. So now we're in a position where, we're kind of finding ourselves. We're gonna, if you end up, taking a little bit longer with a project like that, then you're putting a lien on property that could be even financed to some extent with public money. So it kind of just seems to be, a little illogical in that sense. So I don't have all the answers, but I just think that there ought to be some, review process where maybe there's 10 different factors that are taken, into account. And where there could be some relief. And I don't think the statute allows, or the ordinance, I should say, I don't think it allows for hardly any relief right now, as far as I can read it. So, if it's vacant, it's vacant. And, you either submit a plan which requires money that you might not have. And, all I can think about, in my final comment here is, Hoyoke Catholic. Hoyoke Catholic sat there for, 10, 15 years maybe. And I don't know, that was probably before this ordinance, or I don't know if they got an exemption or whatever. But, it sat there for probably a very good reason. The financing wasn't available, I don't think, for a long period of time. And when he finally, a committed landlord to the city, E. Dennis Walsh, who did the Caledonian, who had a proven track record in this city, and the city stuck with him, and he stuck with the city, and ultimately you've got beautiful apartments over there now. He did with the White School and Hoyoke Catholic. So, I think that I think I would just like to see more flexibility where the city can work with people, and there's some more more flexibility. I guess that'd be my comment. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to ask him a question?
No, I don't want to
Okay.
ask him a question.
Okay. And we're interested to know, how much of an occurrence this is, how much of a problem it is. If it's one thing in a year, is it 5 things in a year? Is it 20 things in a year? It seemed to me it was 1 or 2. We're just trying to get our arms around the size and scope of what.
Is that a question for me?
Yes, I'm just trying to remember what you said.
The occurrence of what and so many times a year?
Relative to the appeals and the fees, and how many times it's been actually, that the fee has
Went
had
to
be
lien or went
paid.
to the fee?
Yeah, the fee or the lien over
I'm
the
not
last
gonna-
3 years.
Just for clarity, because I don't think it's been discussed yet, but the Board of Health maintains all of the notices and collects all the fees in that department. I act as another enforcement officer to say, hey, you have to register it, and that's
Okay,
it.
so
So the
who-
total numbers, I don't know off the top of my head.
So the Board of Health does the appeals?
Well, no, multiple departments do the actual appeal when somebody chooses to appeal. That's where I think we talked about there being 11 last year, but the amount of people that have paid, whether it be a $500 fee or, keep in mind the first year being $0, you still register.
Right.
So as the one example that came up, if they move the house, they're not subject to the fee the first year, they're subject to just registering, which puts it on a list for the city to say, hey, this is 1 year. And then after a year, I mean, honestly, if it's been a year and it's still vacant or blighted, it's one or the other or both, then the registration will go out again saying now you have to pay the registration, you have to register plus the fee, which I believe is $500 for residential. Yeah, it's $500. Just that, and that's just a flat
I
rate.
just wanted
That
to
doesn't
take
change.
clarity, and I'm just trying to get a handle of, is this a one-off, or is it a theme?
It might,
or what?
there isn't too many.
Okay.
Linda?
It's gone to lien 3 times. The lien process has started in 2000.
I'm just going to say it on the mic because you're not on the mic. Our Board of Health person, Sean, is saying that 3 projects have gone to lien?
3 years of the vacant building fees ended with liens.
Okay.
2016, 17.
3, okay. 3 ended with liens. Okay.
So thank you. I just want to add a somewhat different perspective. So, our counsel, Marty Dunn, kind of spoke to our experience dealing with the legal process with this to date. But I want to talk to you a little bit more about it from the nonprofit management perspective and kind of what we hope we can do and where this sometimes constrains us. So we're well aware of the ordinance, and we have actually no complaints with the way the city has treated us and worked with us when we have been subject to the ordinance. They've actually been quite fair. The 88 Northeast Street property, for instance, we did submit a plan, and we spent about $5,000 replacing boards that the city actually had helped us pay for. The story behind that building was it was part of our portfolio on Northeast Street that had become, as told to me, so overrun with some gangs that controlled the entire building that we actually opted to close the building down. I'm not sure I would have chosen to do the same thing. But that's what I inherited. And we actually received some CDGB money where we tore down the porches in the back, boarded it up, secured the roof, and basically just sort of warehoused it for future use. The challenge I'm looking at now is that is the last of the empty space that we own. When I came here, I discovered we had approximately 16 different properties within our apartments that were not in use. Some of them were, tenants that had been around for 20 years, and the cost of rehabbing the unit after that time was going to be so high that we had to wait a while. Those have been my top priority, and to date, along with housing that we've built and 4 receiverships that we've taken on with the city, we've actually put 15 units of housing back in production in the 5 years that I've been at the organization. The challenge with an 8-unit building is it's a larger scale project. And so you really need a larger amount of subsidy for the kind of affordable housing we do to make that work. The other properties we did, the largest was 6. Other than that, we're using and getting funds to do 2 units in a 2-family house, 1 unit there. We are actually a fairly small scale operation that way. Our goal down there is actually to do a larger scale apartment building and go all the way to the corner over at East of White Street. And we've obtained site control. We actually purchased 1 piece from Mr. Whitman. We purchased another piece from the fire that took place a couple of years ago. But we don't have all the site control we need, and that stops us cold. Okay? And we will continue to work on that. We'll continue to take small steps in the meantime. But that's part of the challenge of development. You conceive of something that you can accomplish, and you have to, A, get control of all the property that you need, and then B, find the resources to make it work. And for what I would like to be doing in that part of the flats, that would be a low-income tax credit project. Those take years to gather. We referenced the Holyoke Catholic, but think also of the Library Commons project that's coming online. Those are buildings that have been vacant for many, many years, and it looks like the work is going to begin as soon as this spring. But it's a very, very long process. Again, that's a low-income tax credit process or resource. Those are very, very difficult to obtain. It's very competitive, and it takes a long time. Meanwhile, if I were looking at $3,000 a year for something that takes 10 years, that's $30,000 out of a fairly tight budget for us to do this work, and it's just a loss of capital that we'd otherwise try and be using to try to carry out our mission. So that's a real problem from a nonprofit management perspective. The other challenge that I would worry about, although I have not bumped into this in the real world, we do receiverships. We really only do them on 1 or 2 family homes. We won't take them if they're much larger than that. And I don't think we've seen a lien on a receivership I've had that's been vacant, but we're about to take a boarded up building that we're just going to tear down over on Lyman Street. And I'm not sure what the tax profile is on that yet, but we have to factor in the cost of the taxes and the liens. You have to pay them up front when you do the receivership. And so for a truly negligent landlord, if we come in and step in their shoes, we step in the shoes with that lien. And again, the cost of that as it mounts up becomes a serious barrier to gathering the capital we need to really turn the property back around. And then I guess the final thing I would just point out to you is we get phone calls fairly often from people who do want to get rid of their properties. And I think liens like this are part of what stimulates that. I almost always turn them down. They're usually multifamily properties. They're very often something that I would be sitting on for years, and I know it right up front. And I know as I'm speaking to them, I don't have a good strategy necessarily to be able to move forward and take care of the place. I mean, I can tell you this, we'd always make sure those sidewalks were cleared, no matter what, building's empty or not. We would do what we can to get after any sort of other blighted appearance on the property. And trust me, with 26 properties around the city, that's very often a big challenge. But, you know, we'd still have the places mothballed for a long time. I have to refuse those time and time again. What some communities do with their community development corporation and their housing organizations is they will use those organizations as a kind of a land bank, a trusted organization that can hold on to vacant properties that otherwise are really just going to be left out in the untreated problem area. Did not phrase that well.
It sounds like a new sort of organizational structure in the city in that case.
Well, actually, I'll give you an example of where it's been used just very recently. The Housing Authority purchased the entire city block over at Chestnut and Cabot Street. And this is possibly going to be for the siting of a school, but if not, they would be prepared to build housing in that area. In a sense, what they did is they used their resources to acquire a portion of that block. They received another portion of that land from the city as a transfer, and they had already owned some pieces of it.
I'm aware.
Right. So they compiled the entire city block. That's essentially the concept of land banking. And so,
Right, but we can't contemplate that under this ordinance, is what I'm saying. It
yeah.
would be a different discussion and a different
Right there with you,
matter, is all
except
I'm
for
saying.
this. Were we to try to carry out our mission and assist the city by being a land bank with properties of that sort, this ordinance would be a complete barrier to us on that. We couldn't have the taxes and the fee on top of it, and then also not have the capital available to do something in a long time. So if we were to, in a different conversation, talk about a solution like that, this would be something to address now if that were going to be possible. So I just bring those things up because, $3,000 at a time is something we are mindful of. We try to avoid it in every way we possibly can, and that's mostly by just not owning buildings like that. And meanwhile, our mission should be acquire those vacant, empty, blighted places that are taking down neighborhoods and turn them around. That's what we want to do for Holyoke more than anything else.
And I take your points, and I totally agree with you. And I think the thing that we were trying to address in the ordinance is the timeline. Do you know what I mean? If it's going to take 10 years, that's a long time if it's already been 20 years.
It's
Do you know
true.
what I mean? And I'm just going to guess that if you didn't already have that property when you took over, you wouldn't have bought it.
Oh, never would. Wouldn't
Right?
touch it with a 10-foot pole.
And so you're just trying to deal with the one thing you have left that you wouldn't normally be.
I also do say to you, if we could be responsible stewards of many of those properties and get them to a destination faster, we'd love to do that. But this would be a barrier for a nonprofit organization like ours.
So, but to your point, what would undo the barrier without needing to provide that same opportunity for any other person who came and said, I have a great plan, but I need 10 years instead of 2 or 1, or, do you know what I mean? I'm just, like, what would be, from your perspective, the answer, or an answer?
So, the one thing is, in terms of land banking, working with the housing authority or working with the nonprofit organization means maybe that is a basis for an exemption. But I actually want to be very fair to my for-profit colleagues that are in the room right now and that do a lot of this same work. You have people in this room right now, and they're not nonprofits. They are trying to build.
Kind of why I'm.
Right, but these are local people. They know our market. They know our community very, very well. They deliver for this community in a big way. I don't know the right way to frame it, but I think certainly some consideration for those of us doing business and being cited in 01040 should count for more than those who are not.
All right. So I guess what I'm hearing, just to summarize, would seem to me to fall in perhaps the arena of appeals, perhaps.
Appeals or exemptions, yeah.
Within the ordinance.
Right.
Perhaps.
Yes, I agree.
All right, thank you. Counselor Murphy.
Just, and Damien, probably for you or to Sean, but, I mean, vacant versus blighted. I'm assuming blighted is far worse than vacant. Is that true, or is that not true?
I think it depends, but they kind of go hand in hand. So the way the definitions are set into our ordinance, which I don't know if you guys have that to look at today, but, blighted gives us a little more leeway, because if you have one person in a 40-unit apartment building, it's not technically vacant, but we can still say, hey, this is a problem. It's all boarded up, and we do have cases like this where there's literally one tenant left in a giant apartment building in a place you didn't think anyone would be living.
Right.
So.
Okay, thanks.
All set.
Just a quick question, Damien. Is there anything, as opposed to doing the vacant building ordinance, why wouldn't we send a letter to the property owner giving them a time frame to do something, and then going to housing court and requesting through the housing court process a receiver to that property? As opposed to just sending, we just did it we just moved Yankee Peddler. Well, here's a letter, and I know that's a bad example because out of courtesy we're probably doing that. But for other properties that were at the $3,000 mark, why are we charging them? Why wouldn't we try to find someone to revive the property, as opposed to try to collect monies that probably won't get to us? I mean, why wouldn't we go to housing court and get a receiver right in place after you send them the courtesy letter? Year 2 comes around, they're at 500 or whatever the number is. How come we're not filing a legal action against them for the vacant property, as opposed to even following the vacant ordinance?
Sure. So, and this is, I think a lot of people don't understand this, that the receiverships are only for residential property. So 90% of what we're talking about here is commercial properties where a receiver can't get appointed, because that's the process. It has to be at least partially, but it's much more favorable in the court system to be almost all residential or 90% residential. And even when it is a mixed use, they don't allow the receivership process to be applied towards the commercial storefront space. The receiver's on their own with that aspect of it. So it's not I agree 100%. If we look at each one and say, we look at how much taxes erode, if it is residential and there's not enough of a tax burden already when we get it, absolutely, I think we prioritize, say, receiver all day long. We don't even bother with the other stuff. But what we're talking about with most of these is there is no option for receivership, either because the taxes are already at a level that no receiver is going to take it because the balance is $60,000 or $80,000, or because it's just a commercial property and it can't go through that process.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Not seeing anyone else who wishes to, yes,
They're jumping up like salmon coming up the Connecticut River.
Oops. And fell.
Good evening, Stephen Bosco, 431 Appleton Street. So first, I want to say that I appreciate all the effort that the City Council and the Board of Health and the Building Commissioner's Office has put in over the years to try to tweak this and get it exactly right. As somebody who's paid this fee on a number of occasions and also appealed it, I just wrote a $3,000 check on a piece of property that I own last month. I don't do that happily. I don't write the check happily, but I understand the purpose of the law and what the city's trying to do. And I definitely, my gut sense is it has a beneficial effect in moving property speculators towards selling their property to somebody who will do something good with it. And I'm not going to say that I think it's a perfect law, but I think it's pretty good, and it's really hard for me to say how exactly I would change it. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor McGivern? Oh. No,
Go ahead, Greg.
Hi, my name is Greg Virgilio. I live at 733 High Street. First of all, I'd like to commend the Board of Health and the Building Department on their execution and carrying out the building fee. I think it's been improved a lot over the years, in terms of the way that they've been handling it, and first of all, I think it's a very fair way of trying to allocate the necessary funds to deal with these vacant buildings, as opposed to assessing the financial burden on taxpayer at large. You're focusing it on the people that are, the cause of the problem. If they're, if these vacant buildings become a burden to the city, a financial burden. So I think it's a fair ordinance. I think the city is doing a good job executing it. Personally, I'm a for-profit landlord in the city. I was the example that Damian Cody used. And I have not paid the vacant building fee because I have put the money into the building. I've got the, in this one case, 185 Pine Street, I have a plan in place. My building permits have exceeded the amount of the vacant building fee, and I've avoided paying the fee over the years that I've owned the building, a few years. And I can say that it's progressing slowly, but it is progressing, and it is a 10-year plan, so I'm on schedule.
Okay. Okay, so you have a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that might
one
be helpful
thing
to the other people here.
Yeah, so one thing that I think about is that the intent of the ordinance is to try and stimulate rehab if possible. And it occurs to me that the funds that are being collected, and they're substantial, I was told over $100,000 this year, which I think reflects a job well done by the city, that if some of those fees that were collected could be allocated toward the rehab of property, that it would stimulate these properties being rehabbed. And whether they're allocated on a dollar-for-dollar basis from whence they came. In other words, if one owner paid in $3,000, would then that money be able to be allocated back to the the rehabbing of that specific property? There may be legal hurdles that would prevent that, but in general, I think the idea is a good idea if it can be implemented. So that would be the only thing I have to say about how to possibly improve the ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor McGivern?
Thank you. If I could direct my question to the Director of the Board of Health. Brian, if you want to come in. And, to the committee and the maker of the order, I fully understand the problem. I think we all do. I fully understand the original intention of this order, and Damian did a good job of explaining the historical tweaks and changes to try to make it fair, and yet again, we still hear the unfairness of the order and the concerns about the order. What we haven't heard, or I think we just started to hear, was where are the collected receipts going? how much is there in this revolving fund? And can we get an historical history of the revolving fund for the past 3 years so we can better understand if it's just a deterrent, that's one thing, but is it a positive impact on what we're trying to do here in the city of Holyoke? And how are the monies being used?
Well, Sean explained how the money was being used.
I'm looking for details, not just in general. How much money is there in the revolving account right now?
I think there's about 100,000. Come on in here, Sean.
That's up to the boss, Sean.
Yes, it is. He's my financial advisor.
Sean, you're in trouble already, you know.
As of about 2 weeks ago, it was at 147,000.
Is that the average over the last 3 years?
So that is what we have collected over the last 2 fiscal years, is how long the revolving fund has been in place. Last year, we spent almost to the dime the $50,000 annual. We were only allowed to expend $50,000, and we spent $49,000 and some change. We spent it all the way up, and those expenditures were mostly cleaning up of illegal dumping throughout the city, and some board ups that were done, and essentially clearing blight from properties around the city that are abandoned and vacant.
Has there been any investment in rehab, in projects that are rehabbing a vacant building?
At this time, we have not done that, but we are.
Is it possible to do that?
So this is an idea that I guess it wouldn't be rehab, it would be the other way, but one of the things that we're hoping to do is to try to use these funds perhaps in a larger scale to take down a building, a full building that is falling. There's several buildings that are in dangerous shape, and we'd like to use that money to demolish the building. But we have not used the funds either way to demolish a full structure or to rehab a structure at this time.
Is there a way that we can reinvest the money into the buildings of the people who are paying this fine?
I'm not aware of the legal framework, so that's a little outside of my...
Would it make more sense? That it would be being available for the people who are rehabbing buildings?
I mean, I don't disagree that that would be a useful outcome for the money. I think that's a good idea. I just don't know what the legal framework of that is. That's outside of my expertise.
That's what we're talking about. We can tweak the legal framework.
Well, I mean the legality of using the money that way, like on a larger scale outside of city ordinance. I don't know what the legality of dispersing that money is. Like, the money that is collected goes into the revolving fund, because to my knowledge, collecting that money, there's a legal requirement that that money is used for a specific purpose. And so I don't know in advance, like, if you would be allowed to collect that money and then disperse it to other property owners.
Okay. Sean, or Brian, not to tie either of you up this evening on this, but could we get a copy of the last 3 years of where the money came from and all the expenditures?
Greg, could you explain what you explained to me in the hallway, what you think should be done with the fees? So you could reuse it? Listen to this idea.
And again, I don't know if this is legal or not. I have discussed it with the law department, and I was told that there would be some legal hurdles. But the idea would be to establish an escrow account, basically, and it's what I spoke with you about.
Yes.
Yeah. So the idea would be to establish an escrow account so that the funds put in would follow a specific building or property, so that if the money were invested in that property, it would stay with that property and then could be used to rehab that property, either by the existing owner, or if the building were sold, it would follow the building to the new owner, so that they could then use those funds to rehab the property.
Isn't that kind of what you were asking us?
I think it's in the direction, Brian, of what we need to look at. You got a cap of collecting $50,000 a year. You got over $100,000 in the fund. You're not using it.
No.
We can only spend $50,000.
Well, I understand, Sean. I understand the constraints on what you can spend, what you can do. That's part of the problem. is we have to tweak that. If we're going to collect the money, we should be reinvesting the money immediately, not sitting on it. And unless this is a really good financial advisor and he's investing that $100,000.
We'll let you know.
And then we can have Linda's debt stabilization account started right here.
There you go.
But I'm just throwing some things out for discussion, and
you're right.
I think it's getting a little bit away from Danny's order
That
here.
100
But
grand is sitting there.
Yeah.
It's not being used.
Right, and if I may, I think the
Found in the auditor's
reason
office.
we set it at 50,000 was because at the time we established the revolving fund, we didn't know how much would be going in.
Yeah.
And we didn't want more than would be coming in to be going out.
So now's the time to look at
So
it.
now would be the time to relook at that revolving fund and what its requirements are, to the extent that we can.
Okay.
So Joe, you want to file 2 orders? No. He doesn't like revolving funds. One of us will have to do it. Counselor Sullivan?
Yeah. So tell me, Sean, you said there's 147,000 in the account right now.
Yeah.
And we've already spent 49,000 year-to-date,
Last fiscal year.
last fiscal year.
We spent a little this year. How much?
Yeah, we have spent this year. I don't know exactly how much we spent this year. I would say it's
8,
less
9,
than
10, 11 maybe?
eight or 9,000, I would think.
Okay.
And some of that includes the cost of putting the liens on. There's an initial cost for assigning all those liens.
Yeah, but there'll be more fees coming in throughout this fiscal year also. So it's safe to say the fund is growing right now.
Yes.
At a pretty good rate.
Yes.
All right.
One quick question.
Counselor Bresnahan?
Thank you. When did it go from the appeal hearings? Who does the appeal hearings?
Law, me, and Damien.
When did it, so the ordinance changed from it being to the Board of Health?
Yeah, you were here when we changed it.
Okay.
You wanted to keep the Board of Health Commissioners as the appeal board, and we decided to change it like I wanted.
I was aware, though, I was here when you,
Here.
I know, but here, like, I wasn't in the Board of Health, right?
No, you were sitting as a council.
Okay, all right, okay, thank
It
you.
was originally the commissioners.
Right.
That I wanted to change, and we sat here and we agreed.
Okay.
I think did you want to talk? Yeah, I thought one more.
Okay.
Anthony Whitman, 121 Main Street, Holyoke. And Dan, I want to thank you for bringing this in front of the Ordinance Committee, because it is a really hot topic amongst landlords and things. It's hard to go to a landlord meeting without hearing somebody, complain about the ordinance or complain about sprinklers or something like that. But what we really see is that this is a powerful tool that that the city has to combat some of the blight. Just like receivership is a really powerful tool, I think a strong vacant property ordinance is also a powerful tool. Some of the really good things we see coming from it are the polycarbonate boarding. Holyoke's gained a lot of traction against blight in the last 10 years, and that comes from the private sector, it comes from the city, it comes from CDCs like One Holyoke, and also responsible home ownership. And we're seeing a combination of that all coming together. And I think this is an important part of removing the blight in these buildings with the polycarbonate boarding. If it puts together a fund that can tear one building down, removing that one vacant building from the neighborhood has a remarkable impact. And up on Pine Street, right by Wisteriahurst, where they tore down the Laurel, One Holyoke put the new house there. We re-sided and put new porches on our house with money, the Arnett money administered by One Holyoke. East Hampton Savings Bank put their branch in, and the city cleaned up the armory after it fell down. So all these different resources came together and really changed that neighborhood. And on Northeast Street, you see the influence of the polycarbonate boarding on One Holyoke's building. It looks great now. You don't realize there's a vacant property on that street. So I think there's some real positive effects there. I think the exchange of real estate, it definitely discourages people that are going to hold the property for future redevelopment without a plan, the way it's currently written.
Speculating.
Right, and it definitely makes me think twice about wanting to own a property that I don't have a plan for. any property that I acquire, I'd want to have a plan for it, and I'd want to know that I have, reasonable means to move forward on it. And I think that's part of the intention of the ordinance. And we've got a couple now that we're in compliance with the ordinance on, where we have rehab plans in place. And, one of them are actively crunching away, working on the property, and the other one is still in the pre-development planning phase. And having the property in that pre-development phase is part of the plan. So it doesn't, I'm not sure that the rehab plan can't accommodate having a long-term strategy for, hey, we're going to apply for this grant, we're going to apply for the tax credits or apply for the money. It seems like that can all be part of the plan, and the intention is just to keep it incrementally moving forwards towards that goal. And then I may not be clear on what parts of the fine could be deferred or not, but if the fee is deferred until the property is rehabbed, it's not such a scary thing for a developer who's confident that they can do it. I think it is important to keep a thumb on what's happening with some of those liens as they accrue, and whether or not in 10 years that would prevent the property from being able to transfer, whether people can get a clean municipal lien certificate. There's still some moving pieces there that, I think it'll be interesting to see how it works out. But I think there's definitely a need in Holyoke to have a strong vacant property anti-blight ordinance, and it seems to be gaining traction.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ilya Schneider from Blue House Property Management, 220 Linden Street here in Holyoke. I want to kind of mirror what a lot of people have said. I think the ordinance has a tremendous benefit. I think that, quite frankly, nobody who lives in the city and operates in the city wants to see blighted buildings, wants to see boarded up buildings everywhere. I think that it's a tremendous benefit for the city overall. I do think that there's some clarification of the ordinance that would benefit everybody, because whether we're talking about city councilors sitting here, whether we're talking about private landowners, whether we're talking about CDCs, there's a lot of confusion about how exactly some of the things work. One of the things I would certainly recommend, and I would say, is that when a property transfers hands, and I'm not talking about myself, for example, owning one LLC and transferring the property from one LLC to another, whatever else. But if a property transfers hands at a legitimate arm's length transaction, I think the time should go back to zero. I know, for instance, myself, I purchased a large 50-unit apartment building that had suffered a major fire, and that I was already a couple of years into it, whereas the previous owner had sat on it while he was waiting for insurance things, et cetera. And it makes all the sense in the world. But I think when the whole purpose here is to fix blighted buildings, to fix boarded up buildings, and to have a private person, whether it's a private or a CDC, coming out and buying something knowing from day one they're already at a $3,000 per year thing, I think defeats the purpose, at least from my perspective. The other thing that I would ask for, and maybe it's there, maybe it's not, but I know Attorney Dunn has been operating in the city for a long time. If he's confused about the way that the ordinance works, who you appeal to, how it works, et cetera, certainly private landowners like myself may need some clarification, et cetera. So I know I had reached out to Councilor Bresnahan regarding and I have two buildings that are arguably affected by this. As far as confusion, and I had sent an email to the Board of Health and was told, no, this actually isn't us. This is the building commissioner and things like that. So I guess arguably what I would ask for, at least from my perspective, and I'm sure for many others, is as much clarification as possible on what exactly the appeal process is. What exactly is it that the city is looking for? I heard a couple of times today a plan, and I think that's a great idea, and shame on me for not having known that that's one of the key driving factors of what the city is looking for. But I think maybe a detailed letter to anybody that's affected. Hey, do this, submit this. We will give you time. We want you to do that. Would be beneficial. But that's all I had.
Thank you. Thank you. Is everybody else set? So I think Damien,
Sorry,
go.
just one
No,
thing.
that's fine.
Because one of the concerns I think I've heard a number of times here is, and I think I started saying how this doesn't fit everybody's model, but the time limit, there is no time limit in the ordinance. If somebody came in and said they want to renovate the geriatric authority, or the mall per se, let's say you needed it, it wouldn't be a thing where we'd say you need to do it within a certain period of time. And in the rehab plans, it's not concrete that you got to give us any particular item. It's just to show progress. So for all the people here today, I think Chestnut, is it Chestnut Park? Over on Chestnut Street, the development for HAP, or is it HUD?
Library Commons.
Library Commons, thank you.
Finders.
That's a plan that includes seeking funding, and that's it. We just want to know, okay, if you're going to tell us you're seeking funding, prove it, and tell us when you're going to show us the proof of that. Great, you're on track, and it takes you 3 years to get historical tax credits. That's not a problem. Just maintain the building per the ordinance, seek out your credits, take your time. Holyoke Catholic was also brought up. I also asked them years ago for a plan during that time, and look at it today. It all worked out. They secured that and they took care of that building. They did it before the polycarbonate, but that thing was locked down. Never had a problem. So I think that, and that was a change again with the previous ordinance. It was 6 months. You had to give us a plan to do everything in 6 months, which again was probably copied off of Boston or something. So we didn't think about it then. We took their words. But the anything over 10,000 square feet, which is not a big building, is an unlimited period of time. You just got to give us something. And at least on our end, I could tell you when somebody gives us a plan, even beforehand, I give examples of things we've accepted for one-family homes to five-story buildings, and saying, here's the other ones that people have given us. They're really basic. They're not complex. They're something, anybody that knows how to write down dates and in some simple language about what they're doing, 2 pages long in a lot of cases. Not, something you could do on a weekend. It's not a big request. It doesn't have to be stamped by an engineer or anything. So, could we put together a packet, perhaps, based on some of the other feedback from landlords? Absolutely. We could always put something better together.
Procedure,
a uniform packet
procedure.
Procedures that everybody gets the same thing, saying, here's some examples. I know we give out the board out specs and we give out individual sheets, but maybe it's, case by case, as opposed to us just putting together a packet, putting on our website. Maybe the Board of Health puts it on their web page as well. That's not a problem, to try and make it a little bit easier.
Right, okay. Well, thanks a lot. For my part, I think a lot of clarification was gained tonight. I hope everybody in the room who was worried about short timelines, I'm hearing 10-year plan works and has happened. Seems doable. I think from the committee point of view, I'm sorry? Oh, go ahead, Councilor Brett.
So are we saying tonight that if a property owner provides a plan, they are exempt from the fee?
So it's not just that you send it in, it's got to get accepted. And so
Right.
in some cases, it's always in writing, formal response with, here's items 1 through 10 of why we can't accept it, please address that.
Yeah.
And I think the maximum has been 3 or 4 times we've gone back and forth.
But if the plan is accepted, is the fee, are they exempted from the fee?
Deferred. And so it's held, nothing's applied as long as you're in compliance with it. And then a year later, and most things require inspections anyway, so we're involved. But we usually set up a schedule. If they say, again, if it's paperwork, hey, we're going to do this application to the state for tax credits. Okay, when's that going to happen? September? Okay, October 15th. Email it to me by October 15th. And if they do, in compliance by the next year when they send out the registration, it's a simple communication to the Board of Health saying they're in compliance. And in some cases, and Mr. Virgilio's he's a good case where his plan the first year was not in compliance by a couple of small items, and I said, just send a new rehab plan, amending it, an amended version. He amended it, told the Board of Health, he amended it, all the windows weren't in, but most of them were, no problem, keep going at it.
And one last clarification, Damon, I appreciate everything you said, is that if I was to buy a property from you and the property was vacant and it was at the $3,000 limit and it was a legitimate purchase and sale agreement, I bought the property October 14th. The property's been vacant for 5 years. It's already at the $3,000 limit. Do I inherit that $3,000 limit on the 15th of October, or does it start back to zero as a new property owner for a vacant building?
I think that came up last time, and I think we chose to keep it that way. So yes, you inherit and some of the examples that were brought up again today were, one LLC to another, but Silvio Conti is a good example where it was really transferred within its own little group of people, and it was the same people doing it. And there's a danger there, but
that could be modified though, I think. That if I was to buy a vacant property and I wanted to restore it because there was a fire, my final thoughts, and I appreciate everyone, hanging out for this long, is that we, maybe table it for a month or so. We ask the landlords to provide written commentary as to their thoughts to me or to the Board of Health, whoever they see fit, and, we present it to the Ordinance Committee, and they have another discussion on this at a later date. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So a motion to table would be in order?
Make a motion, we table this.
I second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And we will look forward to getting feedback. Once I get feedback, I'll put it back on the agenda, but the ball's in your court. Okay, so can we go back? I have the information we need to go back to item, and we didn't take any action. I know, I want to go back to item 2.
Oh, because they're still here.
We didn't take any action, we just closed the public hearing, so we're still,
The whole
yes,
process for it.
Okay,
yes.
perfect.
So,
Absolutely. Whoa,
if I could have a motion to go back to item 2.
I'll make a motion, we go back to item 2 on the agenda.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we're going back to item 2 because I have the language sent to me from Ryan relative to the conditions on the special permit. And just to be clear, because we're bouncing around on the agenda a little for the public, item 2 is the special permit application submitted by EMB Natural Ventures LLC for the establishment of a marijuana facility for cultivation purposes at 140 Middle Water Street, Holyoke. So here are the conditions that we have placed on these special permits. 1, that the owner of the building always pay commercial property tax rate to the extent allowed by federal, state, and local laws for the duration of the special permit. 2, that the business retain a minimum of 30% Holyoke residents for non-security jobs. That hiring preference be given to security personnel that are retired Holyoke police or a retired member of another police department now living in the city of Holyoke. 4, that there shall be no marijuana consumption allowed on site. 5, there shall be no deliveries of retail or medical marijuana from the site to individual homes, residences, or people. 6, that the hours of operation be 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Sunday. That's it.
Yeah, those conditions are all consistent with what Ryan Allen
What
had
you were
told us
aware
and what we had heard from prior applications. And having discussed it with Mr. Fernandez, we find those conditions to be not only acceptable, but very reasonable.
Okay, thank you. So in that regard, and a motion, Counselor McGivern.
I'm sorry, just on the hours of operation, I understand that with dispensaries, but I didn't think we put hours of operations on manufacturing.
I think we're talking about the regular hours of operation, but we knew that people would have to be in there for watering or this or that. And I think the applicant had stipulated 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., if I recall correctly. Am I right?
We stipulated that our employees would be there on a 8 to 8 basis and on weekends, but there would have to be some monitoring on off hours. We have one individual who's he has the title master grower in the other facility, and I would expect him to have the same title here. But he's likely to come in at all hours of the day just to check on the plants.
Right, but I mean, we're just talking about
I wouldn't
basic
call that regular
operating.
hours of operation.
Conducting business.
Right, hours of operation. I mean, in any business, you're open from 9 to 5. It doesn't mean nobody's in the store at
Right,
10.
but to address the counselor's point, for a dispensary, that there's more logic to have a limitation on hours of operation than in a cultivation facility. But having said that, we accept the condition.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's,
My point, and I appreciate that, accepting the condition, is when it's manufacturing, the more hours of operation, the more jobs there are. And that's the benefit to the city. It's not a deterrent to these zones or these neighborhoods. It's not a deterrent to anything, but.
right. And I mean, this is what we've included in them, but when they did their overview, he stated those hours anyway. I mean, I just sort of assumed what you said was what you wanted.
When we talk about regular hours of operation in terms of having a full staff there and that kind of thing, that's what it's going to be. I don't think that, at least in the first year of operation, certainly, we're going to be at a level of having a 24-hour staffing, full-time staffing. It's just not reasonable. If there were to come a time where we'd want to do that, we might want to come back and modify the condition. I mean, I do understand the point, and I think the logic of it does apply more to retail establishments.
But Holyoke in its heyday, manufacturing was 3 shifts, and the city was alive for 24/7. That's the point I was making.
Well, and I hear you, and it's fine. I was just saying it didn't conflict with what they put forth.
I just want to say one thing real quick, guys. My full intentions is to be 24 hours in operation in the future. As of right now, 8 to 8 is fine. But once we have different ways of growing, when we have a different cycle going through, that means it's going to be more hours. So we are going to have a third shift, but I don't see that being for at least the first year or so.
Councilor Murphy?
Just before I make a motion, because I would like to move that we grant the special permit, but I just would like to make 2 points. Number one, and this goes back to many of the things we dealt with in our younger days, Joe, when we had people coming in and saying, we're going to provide this number of jobs. And I always said, did we ever get them? And finding someone to give me an answer was like trying to go to a dentist and having them pull your teeth. So I'm asking you, and that's only my request. Obviously, we had people, and I'm the Ward 2 representative. So as you start to hire, you don't have to give me names, but I would like to know how many people are hired from Holyoke and how many of those people were from Ward 2. And I don't think they all should be from Ward 2, but I certainly think there should be a significant portion from the neighborhood.
Yes.
And I think that would help our economy as well as, so.
I do agree with that, and it's something that I did in Waterbury. When I opened Waterbury, I actually have, I think it was 85% of all employees were from the Waterbury area. And unfortunately, I'm not from Waterbury, so I was not kind of that. But I always believe that as much as you give the community give back to us. And that's the way I feel all my business should be ran.
Thanks. And in line with what Councilor Murphy said, if your business is going and thriving and you want to expand, then that's a perfect time to come in, amend the special permit.
Yeah.
We have a conversation about what those numbers are, what they look like, and then what they'll look like going forward.
Yeah.
Sound reasonable?
Just an added point to that, I keep hearing this Waterbury reference, that 38 years ago, I got married in Waterbury. And I'm going to check that up with my wife's kin that's still down there.
No problem. No problem.
Councilor Sullivan?
Just to Councilor McGivern's earlier point, and I don't want to hold anything up tonight, but I'd suggest to the committee, just think about striking the limitation on the hours and don't make them come back. If Hazen Paper, if Subaki, if Hamden Papers, if Sonico wants to add a third shift, they add a third shift. They don't come in front of the city council and ask permission to add a third shift. They add a third shift. It's a manufacturing process. It's part of their business operation. It's not about, like we said, about retail and stuff like that. I don't know why we're doing that here, when it's not required of any other manufacturing businesses, especially in
Once I add
this Maple Mill district.
Well, they're not done under special permit. It's just a different process. The whole thing is.
I don't mean to cut you guys off, but once we do open a third shift, that's going to add in 10 more employees for us. So it's beneficial for us to go third shift, but it will take some time to do so.
Right, so.
Does the special permit require those hours, though, right?
Well, if we put the condition,
You only have
it
to
limits it. It doesn't mean they can't come back.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if everything was going well and they want to expand it, we would. But to the 2 points made, we could eliminate
I'd be willing to make that amendment.
Motion to strike.
item 6 in terms
I'll
of
second that.
limiting the hours of operation.
I'll second that.
Second, yeah, aye.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye. I'll make a motion. Have we granted the permit? No, we just
No,
made
we
the
have
amendment.
not, so we still need a motion.
we
So
should
now,
continue.
so now your motion would be to grant the special permit with the conditions read into the record, 1 through 5.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we grant the special permit with the conditions read into the minutes, 1 through 5. Not 6.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all, and thank you for your patience.
Good luck. Thank you guys so much. And stay in touch with the report.
We still have more to do. Okay, on to item 8.
Yeah.
I make a
What should we
motion
take? Go ahead.
to take up item 8.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Item 8, filed by Councilors Leahy and Councilor Bartley. Any city department receiving grant money as approved by the city council per Mass General Law or any other authorizing criteria shall within a reasonable period of time, but no later than 60 days from the conclusion of said grant, generate a detailed report that matches the planned outcomes with documented results. The report should be submitted to the city clerk and forwarded to the next available city council agenda. Once received and approved by city council, the mayor shall have the report posted publicly. The maker isn't here. None of the makers are here. I'll accept a motion to table.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is a good order, though.
It is, but, you know,
Aye.
it's not an emergency. Going on to item 9.
Item 9. Make a motion, we take item 9.
Oh, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Filed by Counselor McGee, ordered that the city council adopt MGL Chapter 33, Section 59, more specifically, that an employee of the Commonwealth in a reserve component of the armed forces who is ordered to service for more than 30 consecutive days shall be paid the regular base salary as a public employee, et cetera, et cetera. The reason I'm not going to read this whole thing is because we already adopted this in 2000, anyway, in the past. We already have it as part of our ordinances, so the motion would be, the order is complied with.
Complied with, I'd second that.
Okay, so
All in
second.
favor?
Aye.
Okay, item 10.
Okay, can I just make a suggestion? We could probably do it next week. But even when our ordinances duplicate a Mass General Law, sometimes there's a benefit to accepting the Mass General Law, because it may not cover us if we don't accept it.
I think we had accepted
Did we
it.
do this, did we do both?
So there were 2 separate orders, and for some reason, I had just put this one on, not the other one, but we'd already done the big one.
So this one was for the length, so Veteran Services had reached out and asked us to submit this as an order, and we got it done, and then he said, no, wait, I think we've already done this. So he wanted us to submit the order for the language, and then realized that we had actually already adopted the statute. So we're actually covered.
Okay,
We're
both
good.
ways?
Statute, the amendments, everything, so.
I'm sorry.
So
That's
we're
okay.
legal.
You're forgiven.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to take up item 10?
Make a motion, we take up item 10.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 10, filed by Counselor McGivern, referred to Ordinance Committee from Finance Committee. This is the legal language to set up the revolving fund for the fire department.
Can I save you some reading?
Oh, I was gonna say, can I do an abbreviated reading?
I was going to say that they are not looking to do the revolving fund. So this one can also,
Who is they?
Who they?
the fire department and the auditor, they decided to let the funds go to the general based on the city council's last comments.
City councilor's last comments. I think I'm the only one that was in favor of that.
But-
Can I ask, may I ask a question though
big
first? Because this,
Sure.
they just stopped this. Has the mayor signed that?
This is draft language from legal.
Yeah.
No, the original order, has the mayor signed it? This is chapter 2. If the mayor doesn't sign this, we can't even act on it.
The original order was sent to finance. I don't know if the mayor signed it.
I don't remember either, and we can't find the original order. Well, let me rephrase we need the mayor to sign this before we can take a vote on it, because it's chapter 2 and has an impact on the budget. We cannot write an ordinance or amend chapter 2 where funds have to be expended unless the mayor initially signs it to put it in front of us.
So I do not know
Guess my
the
question.
answer to that question.
How do we get this?
Well, it came to city council and it was referred to finance.
The fire chief had called me, even though I'm against it. I said, I understand why, and please file it under my name, and I didn't realize they wanted to do it by ordinance, but it did originally go to finance. I didn't check at the time. We were in between a permanent auditor. I don't know, we great law department, but we've had a lot of, change in transition, and usually the auditor would pick up on this, and the mayor would either sign it before it came to us, or it's a done deal.
In the minutes, it does note whether the mayor approved an order. I've noticed that recently. I don't recall noticing it in the distant past on a regular basis, but I have noticed it recently, so I don't know if we can just look up the minutes and see if it's there. But it would have been back in October, right? That's when it was originally filed, I think. Remember we did the research on this, Crystal? Where's, like the Easter egg hunt, try to find the order?
Hey Siri.
Yeah.
If it was that easy.
But I just want to see.
If I could just talk while you're doing
Sure.
that.
Yes, you
Just-
may. We're on the last item.
Yeah, just so, again, my concern, and I heard Councilman McGivern's concern about trying to keep control of things, but, two things. Number one, there are things that are in pretty destitute shape in some of those fire departments that could be, if we were to do the revolving fund, that could be done in a relatively recent time. As I understand it, what they are talking about now is planning on doing some major improvements and potentially going out to a bond, and trying to do a lot of these things, but without a time frame. And we could be going, who knows, another year and a half, before we start to get some of these projects done. I was looking, I know if they did the roof at Fire Station 3 and they stabilized the lead paint and they did new bay doors on Station 6, they actually would actually just about use all the money that they would be getting from the ambulance service for the last 2 years. So, that part would be paid for. They'd have a new roof. Hopefully they'd have lead paint removed and a bay door that works better. But, obviously if there's not a revolving fund, that's not.
But go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it's all right. It sounds to me from what we have here is a blighted building, and we have 149,000 in the blighted building fund, and we could just draw out of that to do repairs on the fire station.
Oh, you can't.
Just so you know, I've already been asked to look at doing something, because there's the blighted buildings in my ward, to see if we can use some of that money to take down a building next to the Boudry Boucher elderly housing on Clemente, and they've tried to sell it and they can't do it. They got no one interested in it. It's falling on, the bricks are falling. So I know Damien has asked me to increase the amount that we can spend from that revolving fund so that they would have enough to be able to take the building down. So actually, I'm just working on getting the actual revolving fund ordinance to see if we can make it from 50,000 to either the receipts or the balance plus the receipts.
The one we were just talking about tonight.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Councilor
And,
McGivern?
my issue is not using the money, Councilor Murphy, I agree with you. The money should be used to repair the fire stations. My issue is, we don't have to put it in a revolving fund. We just have to have the mayor put it in the budget and do it. If the money's there, the money's there, either way. And that's where I think we've gotten way overboard with revolving funds. It's going to be interesting to see what is being or has been done with the vacant building, blighted buildings, revolving fund itself. And I think there's going to be some surprises when we start looking at the way the money is spent. And we may not like what we hear, even if it's well intended. But, the money's coming in, and these buildings need to be fixed. It's no secret. Northampton Street is a travesty, what's happened up there. And even the fact that firefighters have to sleep there, it's wrong, and it's time that we fix it. But whether it's in a revolving fund or whether it's out of a general fund, it's the same dollars. We need to do it.
Okay, so, looking at the minutes from October 2nd, where you filed the order, Counselor McGivern, which is the language in the order in front of us, going down to the bottom of it, he did sign off on it. The mayor. So it's legally before us. I don't know why the changing of the minds in between this, that, and the other thing. I just think we should, I think we should, personally, I think we should move it, and the council can do what it wants.
I'm going to make a motion that we adopt it with one amendment, if I can.
You can say anything you like.
Okay.
Within reason.
Well, you might pay a price, but you can say it.
So, and one of the things is related to it, they almost at the bottom of it, it's the limit of the total amount which may be expended from the fund during a fiscal year. It's like the second to last paragraph.
Shall be the lesser of.
Shall be the lesser of actual receipts collected during the fiscal year. I would like to see that change to, or added, and the remaining balance from previous fiscal years. Because again, I think this is the same thing we just talked about with the other, with the.
That it's sitting there, but you can't use it.
Right. If they're limited to 50,000 and they got 140,000, so I would
Just remember,
that work
once
from
you
a
set up the
legal
revolving fund, only one person is going to decide what gets repaired, and that's the chief of the fire department. No one else is going to have a say in this.
I understand that, but I also would hope that the chief of the fire department would want to be
Hope and reality is not always the same thing.
But also, the reality would be if I let it go and then they decide not to do it, that's also a possibility, unfortunately. I mean,
I just, before we act on your amendment, I just want to check in with legal that that works from a legal point of view, the wording.
I mean, you can control what, it sounds like you're just looking at, can only spend to the actual balance, so you
Correct.
can't overdraw the account.
correct.
Right, but you can use it if it rolled over.
Let's see why not. That might
Okay.
be an auditor question, though. I can email her.
All right.
I mean, that's law now. You can't spend money you don't have.
Well, right, but if I'm understanding you, you want to be sure that if it's sitting there and it didn't get used the prior year,
So if they got it,
it would still be available for the next year.
right, if they got it in May
It
of
would
this
still be
year.
there.
And they didn't spend it, that they could add that to what they're taking in for next year to spend.
I'll double check with our auditor. I
All right, well,
need to make sure that works with the revolving fund.
okay. So is there a second for that?
Second that.
Okay, so the motion is to recommend that we add the revolving fund with the amendment that the limit on the total amount which may be expended from the fund during the fiscal year shall be the lesser of actual receipts collected during the fiscal year, adding and the remaining balance from previous years. So all in favor of approving the revolving fund as amended?
Wait a minute, let me make sure that I'm reading that correctly. Shall be the lesser of the actual receipts collected during the fiscal year. Yeah, I think that works. I'm pretty sure that.
Would you want to say and including the remaining balance? No, it says it.
I think it does. But
Okay, so
for
on the
some reason,
amendment.
it sounds weird.
So on the amendment, all in favor?
Aye.
So then the motion is to add the revolving fund as amended.
Yes.
That's your
Yes,
motion?
that's my motion.
Second?
Yep, second.
So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So the addition of the revolving fund is being recommended to the city council as amended.
Can I just stop for 1 second again, one more time? Because I'm reading this
All right,
again,
all right.
and I just want to make sure we get this right.
Yeah.
Because I'm reading it now, and I'm thinking like, and remaining balance for the first, but this shall be the lesser of the actual receipts. So I think we need to take that shall be the lesser. It would be.
The limit on the
would be expended
total amount which may be expended from the fund during the fiscal year shall be the lesser of actual receipts collected during the fiscal year.
I can put up to and including the remaining balance from prior.
Okay,
I can figure out the finesse there.
Okay.
up
okay.
to and
Yeah, I just want to make sure I didn't end up tying their hands farther.
including, she gets the gist, she'll give us the legal.
Okay.
I'll finesse it. I'll discuss with our auditor and make sure that that's
Okay.
doable, that we can't, only use a revolving fund in 1 year. I'm not aware off the top of my head if that's doable.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure, yeah, I'm good with that.
So
I just wanted to make sure.
we're good.
We're good.
All right. Then,
I make a
Make a
motion to
motion.
adjourn.
I second that.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. That was